This video is a complete masterclass on Google's latest tool, Antigravity. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that you probably come across this application at some point in time and you wanna learn it, but the problem with learning tools like Antigravity is that they're kind of, well, confusing, and it's often hard to know where to start. So here's my promise to you. In this video, you're gonna become an expert at Antigravity, and you're gonna know how to build agentic workflows, and you're also gonna know how to build web applications. And the best part about this whole thing is that you're not gonna have to spend a single penny on this whole video and all the demos, all the builds that we're creating. You also don't need to have any technical or coding experience, and you don't even have to have ever played around with Antigravity, because we're going to be working through it step by step together. Now, before we go into building all this kind of stuff out, let's talk about some practical use cases as to how you could apply a tool like Antigravity to your life to save time and earn money. So the first one is dealing with large data sets online. So we've probably all been there before, where we have to grab a ton of data for analytics or something online. And the problem with this is that when you're scraping data, there's probably nothing more boring than grabbing information online. So for example, if you wanted coffee shops in Toronto in the good old days, this might take you like a couple hours to grab 100 or 200 different coffee shops. But with Antigravity, well, we can do this absolutely instantly, and we can dump the results into like Airtable, for example. And the cool thing is we can actually take it a step further. Not only can we scrape the individual listings off of Google Maps, but we could also go into the individual websites and grab additional information like the email that would not actually be contained on the Google Maps profile over here. So that is build number one, saves a lot of time, and you could go ahead and use this information for leads, right? And that could earn you money. The next use case is something like managing your email inbox. Now, just a couple, I want to say like a year ago, I had 25,000 messages in my Gmail inbox. It was honestly disgusting, and it gave me so much anxiety every single time I logged in. And part of me just felt like, anxiety, because it's like, if I can't get my email inbox under control, then how can I manage, the rest of my life? And so I decided to build a workflow that allowed me to automatically organize this whole thing and bring it down to only a few emails. And here is how it works, and we're going to be building this out together. First of all, when emails come into your inbox, you're going to be able to label them automatically into things like accounting or personal, miscellaneous, and whatever other labels you create over here. And you can take actions on those emails as well. So for example, if personal emails come in, you can automatically draft replies. If you receive attachments like a PDF file right over here, we can drop that into Google Drive. We can also go ahead and automatically archive promotional emails if you wanted to, or social emails, because let's be honest, when Facebook gives you a notification saying, hey, you've had here's the 73rd notification of the day, or when an e-commerce company tries to sell you something you don't need on your birthday, chances are you probably don't care about it, and neither do I. So we can go ahead and archive all of that information, or all those emails. So here's how it works. Email comes in, we sort it using AI, and depending on the category, we can perform certain actions like creating draft emails to a personal email. Not only that, but we'll wrap up this masterclass building web applications. So here's one example. What we can do here is we can upload or drop in a PDF from our computer, and then we can parse information and then export that as a CSV. And another one that I think is kind of like on the surface boring for most people to look at, but is literally one of the most game-changing things if you're in business, is analytics. So let's say you have a Google Sheet of all this information about your clients. You could automatically extract key insight from this. And I cannot tell you how game-changing, actually, I would say life-changing this was to my particular use case in my past business that I sold. But essentially, we could figure out things like where our leads are coming from, what our conversion rate is on those particular leads, of the lead sources we have, which are actually closing deals, which of the sales reps that we have on our team are actually the people that are generating the revenue for us, so that we can make informed decisions based on actual data. And we're going to be building this out as well. But let's talk about two reasons why you should actually care about Antigravity and why you should go ahead and learn it. Number one is about making money with tools like this. There are literally thousands of business owners online today at any given moment that are looking for help automating their business. If you just go onto Upwork, and by the way, you can create a profile here in 30 minutes, you can see there's literally 3,500 people right now looking for AI automation services. If you rotate out this keyword, you can probably find another 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people. So there's a lot of businesses looking for it. You can even post case studies on what you're building on things like LinkedIn and get 60,000 impressions. Now, I started my profile like maybe a couple months ago at 300 followers, and I built it really, really quickly. These posts turn to leads, which turn to sales as well, which could quickly replace your full-time income. And the second use case would be saving time with anti-gravity. So if you're working in a job, you could potentially double, triple, or quadruple your output, right? Which could save you a whole bunch of time, not having to do the work you're doing manually. But also if you're getting paid on a commission basis, you could make more money. You can buy back so much of your time by automating tasks that you're currently doing manually. Now, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Jono. I've created 2 7-figure businesses, one of which I sold last year. And I actually automated up to 80% of everything we were doing manually in that business. And I also run a paid school community of over 400 automation users. Now, in this video today, we're going to be going over quite a bit. First of all, we've talked about some use cases. We're going to be building out everything that we've talked about so far. Then I want to give a clear explanation about what agentic workflows actually are, because I feel like this is like AI's newest buzzword on the block, and it's kind of confusing. We're going to break this down. We're going to make it crystal clear. Then we're going to talk about the anti-gravity basics, right? Everything that actually goes into building this out. But I don't want this to be like some boring, dry lecture where you kind of fall asleep and you wake up at the end of the class. I want this to be something that's highly practical, that you actually get like excited about learning because you can see progress as you're going through it. And how we're going to do that is we're going to be building out 3 live builds, things that you can actually take and use in your everyday life to help you save time and earn money right after this video. And then we're going to be talking about how we can actually publish these agentic workflows and applications live so that you can use them anywhere, anytime, by anyone. Now let's start off by clearly explaining in the simplest possible way what agentic workflows actually are. And in order to explain that, I want to stack 4 concepts that you're already pretty familiar with. So by the time we get to agentic workflows, it just clicks and it really genuinely makes sense. Now the first layer is artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, DeepSeek, all the large language models you're probably using. It's trained on the world's data. You will send off a message, it will generate a response and send it back to you. So for example, you might need help with a particular email over here, okay? And so you can dump that into ChatGPT, it will generate a response, and then you can take that response and send it back. But the problem with this whole thing here is that everything that we're talking about and everything we've done so far is 100% manual, meaning you actually have to go and wait for the email, generate the response back and forth to ChatGPT and send it back. And it also doesn't connect into your tools like Gmail. All of that is manual, which brings us to step number 2, which is AI automation. And these are workflows that you can build in tools like N8N, Make.com, or Zapier if you're familiar with those tools. But essentially, instead of having to do all the stuff manually, well, you can just automate it. So when an email is received, it will start a workflow that will use or plug into ChatGPT to generate the response and then automatically send it back to the person. However, the problem is that if anything changes or if you don't get the right data or whatever, it just doesn't know what to do. It can't think for itself, which brings us to step or stage or layer number 3, which is the AI agents that can actually think for themselves, just like an employee would do. You can think about this like a digital employee. Whereas if you hired somebody at your company and you asked them, hey, can you send off a message? You'd first have to tell them to do the task. Then they would go ahead and they'd do it. And then they'd message you back saying it's been done, right? An AI agent can function the same way. So with an AI agent, you hook it up to a brain with a memory. And this is in the form of a large language model, okay? So it can think and reason on its behalf, just like it can reply to you over here. It can also remember past messages, okay? That's the brain and the memory, and then it also connects into your tools like Gmail to be able to automatically send off that email. So let me give you a practical example of how this works. So you send a message to your employee Bob and you say, hey Bob, can you send off an email to Jono? Well, the problem is Bob probably doesn't know Jono's email off heart. So what he has to do is he has to find that email in Google Contacts, and then once he finds Jono's email, then he can go ahead and send off an email to Jono. So there's reasoning involved. He will take the appropriate steps to get the job done, which brings us to layer number 4, which is agentic workflows. And the beautiful thing about agentic workflows is up until this point in time, you actually had to spend days, months, weeks, or even years learning tools like N8N, Make.com, and Zapier, and they're all very technical. But with agentic workflows, you no longer actually have to learn these tools and build it out, because you're essentially hiring 2 digital employees now. One digital employee that's actually going to build the whole entire workflow for you, just like ChatGPT. You'd send a message being like, hey, build me this workflow. It builds the workflow and then it gives it back to you, okay? So that's employee number 1. You tell them to build a workflow, they build it, and they give it back to you. Employee number 2 is going to run and fix that workflow. So you say, hey, I want to send off an email. It goes ahead, sends off the email, and tells you, okay, the email's been sent off, just like the previous examples. And this connects into all your favorite tools. So in a nutshell, in Antigravity, you can say over here, hey, this is where my prompt goes. I want you to build that, an agentic workflow to send off an email. It will go ahead. It will build out everything for you. You don't even have to connect anything in or learn any tool to accomplish this. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started building our first agentic workflow. So we're going to head over to antigravity.google and download the free desktop application right over here. It'll probably take a couple minutes to download. It'll ask you to sign into your Google account. You should definitely go ahead and do so. And the very first thing we're going to do is cover this user interface, which kind of looks a bit confusing if this is the first time you've ever logged into Antigravity before. So let's quickly diagnose what's going on here. There are 3 columns inside Antigravity. The first one is called the Explorer. This is where all the files and folders live. You can really simply just think about this like Google Drive, honestly. You upload your files into one place. And anytime you open those files, like say you click on leads.csv here, it's going to display the content of that file inside the center pane here. And on the right-hand side, this is, well, you can think about this like ChatGPT. You send a message, it delivers a response back. But in this case, the ChatGPT is more like a junior developer. You're the business owner, you tell it what to do, it goes ahead and writes all the code for you and gets the job done. You do not need to know a single line of code. Now, every single project inside Antigravity requires a parent folder. So we actually have to create a new folder to get started with our very first project in Antigravity. And all these subfolders and files here, they're all going to be contained within that parent folder that we actually go ahead and create. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click open a folder, and I have all of my Antigravity projects stored in an Antigravity file. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder here, and this is going to be called Masterclass / Telegram -1. Okay, so we'll go ahead and create that. You'll notice we're opening a completely empty file and we're good to go. Everything looks good so far. Now, let's just really quickly explore what it is we're building today, which is going to be a Telegram bot. So we send a message to Telegram and we receive a message back. It's as simple as that. And we can trigger as many workflows as we want to. We could trigger 2 workflows, 10 workflows, 20 workflows, however many you want to create. But for the purpose of today's video, in this first project we're building, it's just going to be 2 workflows. One is going to scrape Google Maps. Okay, we're going to pull out listings like coffee shops in Toronto, for example. And of course, you can change out the city, you can change out the service. It could be plumbers in Miami. And we're going to pull out things like the ratings, the website, the phone number, all of that kind of stuff. And then we're going to dump that into an Airtable. And then, of course, we can also call via Telegram or our bot. We can extract information from here. So if we want to search for plumbers that have a rating over 4, we could go ahead and grab that information easily from Telegram. Cool. So that is the first workflow that we're building inside Antigravity. And the first step of this is, unfortunately, also probably the most boring, but the most important, which is planning out our project in Antigravity. And how we're going to do that is by using this instructions.md file that's going to be down below for free. I would highly recommend pausing the video, grabbing this template, and following along with me, just because if we do this together, the chances of you maximizing your learning are going to significantly improve. So I'd highly recommend we do this collaboratively. So we're going to copy all of this text, head back into Antigravity, and we're going to start off by creating our very first file. And I'm going to call this instructions.md. You really could call this anything you want to, but I'm going to stick with instructions, and MD stands for Markdown, which is just really kind of plain text with some styling on it. So for example, we got the styling in blue over here for headers, and then we got this text over here. I can't determine if that's orange or if that's brown. I don't know. Anyways, this file is one of the most important things that we have in Antigravity, because this is like the operating system, kind of like your PC or kind of like your Mac operating system. This is the operating system that we have to develop agentic workflows the way that we want to. So you can kind of think about Antigravity like a blank canvas. You can take it anywhere, any direction you want to. You can use any paints, you can have any style of artwork. You can almost think about yourself like Picasso, which is kind of ironic because I could qualify as the world's worst painter. But anyways, I digress. This is instructions that turn our human prompts right over here into repeatable, reliable systems, okay? And the reason why, and we're gonna be getting into this quite a bit more later on, but AI really can guess. Anytime you send a message over here, AI is honestly, it's just making its best guess as to what you think it wants to do. Just like if you hired an employee, you give it a task, that person's gonna make their best guess at doing the task for you. What we're doing is we're essentially creating like standard operating procedures to have this system designed to behave the way we want it to, okay? So let's go over how this project actually works. There's gonna be two main files that we're creating. First of all, we've already created the instructions.md file. Then we also are going to create something called project specs. You can really just think about project specs as us just defining what we're actually building. We're telling Antigravity, hey, we're gonna go build a Telegram bot that can scrape Google and do all these other things, okay? So we're grabbing all the details we can think of and we're going to add it in here. Common things are like, what's the input that we're sending from Telegram? What workflows are we building? What are the outputs? And all of that kind of stuff. The reality is that when you're building this out from the ground up, you might not know a lot of this stuff. So it doesn't have to be perfect at all. You just got to do your best to kind of enter in as much information as you can, because the reality is that when you're building out these projects, if you don't set yourself up for success at the beginning, you're going to be regretting it, because you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours debugging things that you otherwise would have just overcome immediately had you set yourself up for success planning in the first place. Okay, cool. So this system inside Antigravity is going to function in three distinct steps. We got instructions, we got decision making, and we got actions. So let's take a separate project file that I've just put together really quickly for demo purposes. We could have task number 1 and task number 2. Task number 1 could be scraping Google Maps, and task number 2 could be extracting data from Google, like Airtable or whatever. Every single time we create a new agentic workflow, we're literally just going to document it as guidelines or a standard operating procedure in plain text so that we can read it and understand what's actually going on, right? And then what's going to happen is Antigravity is going to turn our plain text and instructions into code. And this code is going to do exactly what we're asking it to do in this instruction manual right over here, okay? Now, I don't know Python coding at all, and you also don't need to know how to code in Python, because the beautiful thing about Antigravity is we got our junior developer over here, and they're going to take care of literally everything for us. All we have to do is define what it is that we want to do by writing it in plain text, and then Antigravity is going to build code to actually go ahead and do the thing we want it to do. And then we also have this decision step right over here. And let me break this down as simply as humanly possible. You can think about yourself like running a business. You hire a manager. Underneath the manager, there's employees. You send a message to the manager being like, hey, I want to send off an email. And then the manager is going to delegate that task. And they're going to pick the right employee. And they're going to see, well, we have a Gmail employee, we have a Facebook employee, and we also have a Google Drive employee. So because we're sending off an email, it probably makes sense to send this to the Gmail employee. So it's going to delegate the task to the Gmail employee who will get it done. Then it'll be sent back to the manager who will send it back to yourself. So in a nutshell, what's going on here is this agent is just going to determine, hey, of these employees or of these tasks, which one is most qualified to get the job done? And so it'll choose the right one and then execute the task. And so that's essentially how this whole system works. We also got a file structure. We're going to be going over this quite a bit later on. But for now, we're going to kind of just skip over that. And then we also have a bunch of rules associated with building out things in Antigravity. So for example, we always need to read these files first. These are the operating systems built into Antigravity. So before the junior developer goes ahead and actually does anything, we're just making sure it's actually aligned with the project details and also the instructions. Also, all the code needs to be written in Python. There's a lot of different coding languages out there. We just want to stick to Python. And we also want to make sure that every time we build a workflow, it has those two files. It has the actual natural text, the instructions or the standard operating procedures, and also has the accompanying code that goes ahead and does the action on our behalf, and so on and so forth. We're going to break down every single thing that we build into small pieces. We have a deployment checklist. We'll get into this later on. And if something breaks, we just want to make sure that Antigravity goes ahead and fixes it so it doesn't happen again. Which brings us officially to the end of the instructions guide. And we're going to go over to our very first prompt here. Okay, this is going to be down below in the description. I highly recommend downloading this and following along, just copying and pasting the exact same prompts in so that we can ideally get the same responses. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this first prompt from my web scraper build, and we're going to paste it right in here. Let's walk through what is happening here. we're asking our junior developer to read this file right over here and build out the project system file structure. And that project file structure is right over here. So we got lots of different things that we're actually going ahead and building out. Now, before we dive into what this actually looks like, let's take a look at what Antigravity is actually doing. Our junior developer is literally just having a conversation back and forth with us, telling us exactly what it is doing. So the first thing is it's saying, hey, I'm actually taking a look at the instructions guide that you've set up. And now I'm going to execute some code or run some code to actually go ahead and do the things that you're asking me to do, like set up this file structure on your behalf. And it's going to write some more code and a bit more code and a bit more code. And now it should start actually building out all of these files for us. But it looks like we've actually potentially ran into our first error here, which I'm glad we've ran into because this is an important one. If you do not save files that you create, unfortunately, technically, those files don't actually exist. So we need to go ahead and hit File and Save. Okay, and once we hit File and Save, then this instructions.md file actually exists. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit this reset button here, which is going to send the same message again. Okay, so we'll go ahead and send this off one more time. And now that the file is saved, it should be able to actually go in and analyze this instructions.md file. Now it's reviewing it. It's defining the file structure. You can actually see the thoughts here as it's happening. Then we can see the code running. We now have the file structure being created on the left-hand side. It's gone ahead and created this project specs file and this .env file for us. Okay, cool. And now it's running a bit more, generating some more code. And when it's all done, it's going to reply back to us in the 3 steps that we asked for it to reply to us. So if we go into our instructions.md file, you can see that we asked it to reply in a certain way. We asked it to give us a plan up top here, followed by what it needs from us, followed by the next actions and any errors that it encountered. And so we can actually see all of these sections inside its response, which is pretty cool. I just find that this helps us stay nice and aligned and organized so that we understand what needs to happen next. Okay, so the plan is what happened, and then what it needs from us is moving forward. It actually needs the specific details for the project to fill into this project specs, because if you recall, we need to give this project a goal. Right now, Antigravity has no freaking idea what it is we're building. Now, I've already told you we're building on a Telegram bot, but at the time of this recording, Antigravity still doesn't know what it is. It's gone ahead and created a blank project specs file, and we need to actually go ahead and fill this in. So it's just going to tell us to actually go ahead and do that. Just before we do that, we see that we have this accept all button right down here. What's going on is that anytime Antigravity runs or a junior developer runs, it's going to go ahead and create things or edit things. And what it's asking for us is for approval. It's saying, hey, I've gone ahead and I've created something. We can see it's created this because it has this green background right here. And all we have to do is say, hey, I approve what's happened. I accept the changes and we're good to go. So that's really as simple as that. Okay, awesome. Now, regarding this file structure, let's really quickly go over this. Essentially, all of our instructions are going to be hosted in this instructions folder, okay? And all the accompanying code is going to be held in the executions folder. This temporary folder is just like results that we get back in the form of a CSV. So if we scrape Google Maps, it'll give us back Google Maps data, and we can go ahead and safely delete this as well. With the .env file, this is for all your passwords and secret keys. Anytime you have like agentic workflows or web apps that you're building, you usually want to store your secret keys in a safe place, and that is the .env file. Okay, sweet. So we're good to go. Now we need to take the next step right over here, which is actually telling Antigravity what it is that we're building, okay? So I'm going to copy and paste the second prompt in here, and this is going to be a rather big one, so we're just going to copy all of this and kind of work through it together. But I'm now messaging Antigravity saying the actual project we're building. So essentially, we are building a Telegram bot, and in a nutshell, we're going to receive a message from Telegram. We're going to plug it into Gemini for the brain to think about what we're doing, determine which workflow to run, execute the workflow, and then send a response back to Telegram. We're going to outline the 3 workflows that we're actually building and all the details that we can think about adding in there. And then we're going to also specify we're uploading this into Modal, which will be in the cloud, and we're just defining what done looks like so it knows what we're actually looking for. Now, this might seem like a lot of information, but all I'm doing is I'm just starting with ChatGPT here. I'm adding in some scribbles here. Then it's building out this prompt for me. And then I'm adding this prompt into into Antigravity. And now it's going ahead and actually constructing this instructions file for me. So the reason why this is so important is because if Antigravity doesn't know what it is you're building, it's going to take its best guess. And a lot of the times it can guess wrong. And so if you want to bypass hours of going through trial and error and debugging, one of the best things you can do is just set yourself up for success in the first place by actually saying what the project specifications are, which is what we've gone ahead and done here. It's asking for us to also accept all the changes. In the red here, we've actually deleted rows or lines, and then in the green here, we're replacing them with other things. So I can go ahead and accept. And really all we're doing here is we're just want to go through this and make sure that everything looks good. And again, number one here is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It never will be. A lot of the times when you're building this stuff out, you don't even know what perfect looks like until you've actually gone ahead and started building it. Number two is that generally speaking, if you put a high quality input in, you'll get a high quality output. If you put garbage in, you'll also get garbage out. So we just want to set ourselves up for success at the very beginning, specifying exactly what Antigravity is looking for. Now, just before we move on with the next prompt here, I want to point out something that's essential to know about Antigravity, and that is that it's probabilistic in nature. This might sound like a nice, flashy, fancy word, but let me actually break down what this actually means. So when you're dealing with the deterministic workflows, you can think about tools like Make.com, Zapier, or things like NADEN. Essentially, you build something and it runs predictably every single time. Like you build it and you just know that it's going to act the exact same way every single time. With Antigravity, it's like ChatGPT. You send it a message and every single time it responds, it's always going to be different. Every single time, and you're always going to get different responses. And so if you think about it, when we're sending off messages inside Antigravity, it's kind of like hiring 10 junior developers to get the job for you. They all might come to the same conclusion, but the way they go about generating the code might be slightly different. And on top of that as well, the way that the final result also could be different. So the reason I'm telling you this is because as we're going through this, your code or your results will sometimes not be exactly what you see on my screen. And that is because of the nature of Antigravity. And if that is the case, all you have to do is work back and forth with your junior developer over here just to course correct. You have to say, hey, this isn't working the way I want it to. Can you please make it work this way as well? You might have to send over like 1 or 2 extra prompts just to course correct and get it acting the way you want it to. Now, there is one thing about this. The probabilistic nature of Antigravity is the junior developer over here. So let me explain what I mean here. And we're going to go back to this example that I was showing at the beginning of this video. When we ask our junior developer here to code something out for us, it's going to do its absolute best guess at figuring out what to actually build, which will be like Python code and an instructions guide, just like this, right? When you have code like this, and again, you don't have to be a developer, but this code here is deterministic. This will always run the same way. So once it's actually coded, it runs the same way. But what's probabilistic is the junior developer here, because if you run this 10 times, it can generate the same kind of agentic workflow in 10 different ways. But once the agentic workflow is actually built, this code is always going to function the exact same way. So this is deterministic. The junior developer over here is probabilistic. Okay, so that is it for the planning. We can move on to the fun part, which is actually building out the project. Okay, awesome. So now what we're gonna do is head over to the third prompt over here, okay? And now we're asking it to please create the instructions and execution files to web scrape Google Maps. It must accept the service, city, and count and output the exact number of leads with fields, name, service, address. Okay, so what's going on here? Let's break this down step by step. What we're essentially saying is we want this particular, we want Antigravity to go to Google Maps and pull out all of these listings, like the phone number, like the ratings, like the website, all of that kind of stuff. And we want to store it in a CSV file to begin with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this off. And now what we're doing is we're going to wait for Antigravity to build this out. I'm adding in a bit more information here as well. So specifically, I'm saying I want you to create these files in the instructions folder and also in the executions folder, just like we had before with these particular tasks right over here. And we can actually see that it's going ahead and it's building out those files for us. So if we open up instructions, now it's gone ahead and in plain English, it's built out this entire standard operating procedure, or all the instructions required to actually go to Google and scrape all this data off of Google. And then we also have the underlying code as well. So we have the actual instructions, and then we have the code that does the thing we wanted to do. Now, Antigravity has gone ahead and opened up a new browser on our computer, and we can see that it's automatically gone to Google, and it can go through this list and scrape results. When it says agent needs your input, what's happening here is we actually have to come back to Antigravity and give permission for it to continue. So I'm going to go ahead and click allow. And for all these changes that it's making, I'm also going to go ahead and accept all of those changes too. So again, we messaged Antigravity. It went ahead and built out these two scripts. Then it ran some code. It went ahead and opened up Google on our behalf. And now it's actually pulling out these results in real time. And we can go ahead and allow it to take the next step as well. And now it's actually gone ahead and built out the sample leads CSV file. So if we go into the temporary file here, we can see all of the coffee shops that it extracted here. We have Gold Star Coffee and we have Nespresso Boutique. Okay, cool. So that looks good to me. We've gone ahead and we've created our first agentic workflow, one that just simply scrapes data from Google Maps, okay? And now it enters it into a CSV file. That is essentially all we've done. We told it the exact fields that we want, like the name field, service, address, website, rating, date created, and status. And it can get all of this information from this particular Google Maps listing here. Okay, and I'm just gonna click allow, and it's gonna continue on with the rest of the build. A lot of the times, Antigravity does take a bit of time to go through and execute the task. And generally speaking, I'm glad it showed this Google Maps page here. But generally speaking, I actually don't like when it opens up Google Maps, because a lot of the times we just have to keep going back and forth and accepting these changes and all that kind of stuff. And it can take a lot of time just to do something that should be significantly faster. Now, just as a pro tip, if you guys want to speed this up, you can go into Antigravity and go to settings in Antigravity settings here, and you can go to browser and you can accept things like enabling browser tools. Or for example, when it's asking for approval, you can say always proceed, or have the agent decide, or always a request to review stuff. And for terminal commands, you can always proceed or review and all that kind of stuff. So you can actually change the settings here if you want it to go faster or have more approval. So everything's good to go here. It's gone ahead and it's created those workflows. Okay, and now it's created that web scraping agentic workflow using a coding language called Playwright. It's tested it successfully, and it's also refined it, and we can see the results from that scrape in this test_leads.csv file. Now what it's saying is it needs from me, the web scraper is ready. I'll proceed with the Airtable integration. So it's actually telling us the next step, and it's telling us what it specifically needs from us. It needs the Airtable base ID and the table name. So that looks good. We can go ahead and also approve these changes to the scrape_google_maps.python script right over here. We can see that it updated things in real time, because maybe it created version 1. It didn't like version 1. It encountered some mistakes. Then it went ahead and created version 2, and then it made some mistakes and created version 3, and so on and so forth, right? So it actually improves itself over time. But that's the beautiful thing about Antigravity, is that you can build fully customizable solutions. So there are a lot of options online, like appify.com, for example. This is a scraping site. You can come in here and scrape stuff off of TikTok or Google or Instagram. But the problem with something like this is that the moment you have to scrape something like a really niche site, they might not have it. And so you're just, unless you're a coder, you're out of luck. But with Antigravity, you can create very customizable solutions and build out whatever it is that you're looking for. Okay, so with that being said, let's move on to the next section over here, which is going to be connecting Airtable into our workflow, because right now we just have this CSV file, and that's great. But what happens if we want to share these results with our team members, or just have them published online so we can access them anywhere at any time other than just on our computer? Well, that is where the next step comes in, and that is connecting in Airtable via MCP. So let's walk through this right now. So I am going to type in the next prompt right down here, okay? And just before I continue, I just want to point out three things down here. You can type responses. You can also just have audio messages as well and just speak to Antigravity. That's really powerful as well, because it can speed up the workflow. The reason I'm not doing audio messages is because I want to have prompts that you can just copy and paste. And at any point in time, you could even just take a screenshot of the text on the screen, and then you could just add this in as a screenshot, and Antigravity will actually read that prompt and build out exactly what we're building. And then we have the option between fast and slow. So conversation modes here. Planning means it's slower, but more methodical and better responses. Faster is just faster. I'm choosing fast just because everything we're building out is pretty simple for Antigravity to build. So I just want to get quick results. And then we also have different models here. We have models by Gemini, Claude, and GPT. You can see this warning sign right over here. What this is saying is I actually ran out of usage for those models on Antigravity. Now, it is completely free to use Antigravity, but you could run into limitations, especially on a free plan. And if you do ever encounter limitations, which hopefully you don't, but you may, you can always head over to gemini.google/subscriptions, and you can get Google AI Pro. Now, the reason I mentioned Google AI Pro is because it has specifically higher rate limits with Antigravity. And I'm pointing this out not because, I hope that you have to spend more money, but just because when I ran out of or exhausted all of my usage limits for all of these models, it was trying to push me to AI Ultra over here. And I was like, man, is the only option really spending $400? Well, $339.99. That was a bit of a roundup on my part, but that's a lot of money to spend. It goes from like free to $400. Like, that gap is just excessive. But after a week, I actually found out that they had this AI Pro model as well, which is way cheaper, and you can get started for free if you want to. So that's why I'm pointing this out, because they're going to try and push you into this. You do not need that. You can get the AI Pro model if you want. Okay, sweet. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue on with this build where we send this data into Airtable. So again, we're just making sure that we enter this data into Airtable. We're also going to ask for clear step-by-step instructions on how we can create an Airtable token, because anytime you're connecting external services, you will need like a secret key, a password, a token, an API key, whatever. Names are all different, same kind of thing. You need a password, just like if you were to log into your Gmail account and you need a password to log into here, you also need a password to essentially connect any external applications in as well. Now, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. Let's go over that really quickly. It's a way for large language models like Antigravity to connect into tools to take actions on your behalf. So if we hit the three dots here and we hit MCP servers, there's a few different servers that you can add in here by default, but unfortunately Airtable is not one of them. It doesn't mean that we can't connect Airtable in. We just have to set this up ourselves. Okay, let me break down exactly in a nutshell MCP. So essentially we have Antigravity here, and then we have an orchestration layer. What's going on is we're going to have AI decide which tool, like out of HubSpot or Slack or Airtable, like which tool we're actually using and what task we're doing in that particular tool. Like, are we searching for data and pulling it back? Are we adding rows to Airtable? Like, what are we doing in Airtable? And then MCP is going to be the tool communicator, where it just standardizes all the inputs and outputs so that we can send data very easily without any setup from Antigravity into Airtable. So 4 steps. We're going to standardize the connection between the large language model and tools. Orchestration is going to pick out the right tools and actions. It's going to have access to all the actions, such as finding Airtable sheets and being able to add or update existing rows. And of course, there's no technical setup required at all. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, what we are doing here. So we've gone ahead and we have created this, okay? And it's gone ahead and created the next agentic workflow for us, which is actually going ahead and saving leads into Airtable. It's given us a description, it's given us the inputs, it's given us all the fields, and all these fields here are the same as the fields that we scraped from Google Maps, because I think we were pretty careful to say match the columns exactly to the fields we've already collected from the web scraper. And then of course it's gone ahead and it's created all of the code that is going to run in the background to actually get the task done. Sweet. So that looks pretty good to me. Then we have a bunch of gibberish over here that is a bunch of coding that I don't understand what's going on. And then it's going to give us the plan of what's actually happened and the Airtable setup guide step by step. And this is the beautiful thing is before, if you were having to connect in tools like Airtable, it's kind of like anxiety provoking because you're like, oh my God, like I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to connect things in. And even just this one simple step could take you like an hour to figure out by yourself. And what Antigravity is going to do is it's literally going to tell us step by step exactly how to take a 1-hour project and compress it into like 10 seconds. So we're going to click this link right over here. And we're going to open up this particular page. You will need an Airtable account in order to get this started, and that is for free. The next step, and it's literally what I love about this, is it's walking us through literally step by step. It says create token. Okay, we're going to go ahead and create token, and it's going to even tell us the name to provide your lead gen bot. Thank you very much, Antigravity. That's very nice of you. And then it's going to tell us that we need 3 scopes. So let me break down what a scope is. A scope is essentially like when you're connecting in Airtable, instead of being like, hey, let's give you access to do everything at any time, it's saying, whoa, like what do you actually want access to? And for example, maybe you don't want access to like deleting things by mistake. So maybe we'll lock that off and we're not able to do that through this MCP connection, right? So we're specifying exactly what kind of actions we want to give to Antigravity to execute on our behalf automatically. And these are the 3 things. In a nutshell, what's going on here is schema bases reads is essentially saying, hey, we can go ahead and we can read all of the different bases that we have in Airtable. And then the next one is data records read and data records write. So it can actually go ahead and read this table here, see all the data, and it can also update and create new data as well. And so that is all we're doing. And then the next step here is we need to select the specific workspace or base you want to use, which is right over here. I'm going to go ahead and give it access to all of my bases. And then I'm going to create a token. And now it's saying copy that into this .env file. So if you recall, the .env file was where we had all of our given tokens or all of our secret password keys, passwords, you name it, all of that kind of stuff is going to be located here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this, okay, and we are going to paste that right over here. It's actually gone ahead and created this Airtable _ API _ key, and then we paste the exact ID there. Now I'm going to remove that hashtag because I think that makes it a note, and now we're making this real. Now keep in mind, this name is arbitrary. You could call this anything you want to. You could call this Airtable API. The name is just really for you to be able to see what it actually is so that you don't forget it. Cool. And then what we also need is we need to get the base ID. So it's going to look like airtable.com/app whatever. And the part starting with app is your base ID. So let's go ahead and grab this, and it should be this right here. I can see that starts with app. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose the base ID, and it doesn't look like it actually created this for us. So I'm going to copy I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to copy what it said here. And again, name's arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. You just need to put an equal sign here. I'm going to say Airtable base ID equals whatever the case may be. And we also have to create a table, and you want to name it leads. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this leads over here. Save that. And what else? Yeah, we also need to add in all of these fields as well. And I have gone ahead and I've added all of these fields as well. Name, service, address, website, email, rating, date that we actually grab these leads on, and the status of the leads, whether the status is a lead, contract lost, contract won, and what the actual deal value is. And all of that looks great. We need to copy this environmental variable. And so what it needs from us is to go ahead and just add in exactly what we've added in. Now, again, that probably would have taken an hour alone. We've gone ahead and condensed that down into a very short amount of time. Just before we actually go ahead and accept this and move on, we need to make sure to save this particular workflow. Otherwise, we're going to encounter some problems down the road. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and accept all the changes that it made, like adding in this Airtable Python code that will execute this Airtable, instructions guide where we're adding leads to Airtable. I'll go ahead and click accept. And the next thing is that we can go ahead and just give this a shot. So I could say, for example, please scrape 5 plumbers in Miami and add them to Airtable. Okay, sweet. And now what's going to happen is it's going to go ahead and test this out. First of all, it's analyzing the .env file. So it's going to pull out these secret keys and make sure that we can actually connect that into our Airtable. And it looks like I may have made a mistake over here where it says equal leads. That may be a problem. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it isn't. But let's just take a look and see what's actually happening here. Okay, awesome. So we're running a bunch of code. Okay. And it's going to analyze this again. And instead, this time, it looks like it's actually gone ahead and changed that base ID for us. So I did make a mistake here. It was intelligent enough to spot the mistake and correct that mistake so that that didn't hold us back. And I'm going to accept all of these changes. And now it's going to continue to run some code for us. Okay. And once it's done, it's going to tell us the plan, what it needs from us, and the next steps. So I have successfully scraped 5 plumbers in Miami and uploaded them into Airtable. So that looks great to me. We got the plumbers, all the names, addresses, websites, emails, ratings. We actually didn't get the emails, pardon me. Google Maps listings does not contain email addresses. You'd actually have to take it a step further and web scrape the individual websites to pull that out. That's going to be like an additional thing that you can build on top of today's video. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to keep it nice and easy and not include that in there, but really it should just be an extra prompt to be able to actually pull that out. And I will include that prompt in this particular guideline if you guys want to go ahead and use that as well. So everything looks good to me. I'm happy with this. The next action is I will now proceed to create the Airtable search workflow. Okay, so it's already going ahead and creating everything for us. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this next workflow over here. Please create the instructions and execution file that pulls the results from Airtable via MCP. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be able to extract things like plumbers from Airtable that might have a rating over a certain amount. We can actually see that it screwed up the ratings over here because I doubt that all of these have a rating of 0. So we're going to have to fix that as well. Okay, so that's one additional thing that we'd have to change. But we're going to be able to filter on a bunch of different stuff, like we can find people based on city or service or minimum rating or status or whatever the case may be. We can sort it from highest to lowest. And we're also going to pull in the exact amount of people that we're looking for. So if we want 2 plumbers, we should get back 2 plumbers. If we're looking for 5 plumbers, we should get back 5 plumbers. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy this, and I am going to send this off, and it should be able to actually extract all of those leads for us that we're looking for. So it's gone ahead and it's created airtable_search_leads.md. And we can see that right over here. This workflow queries the Airtable database to find leads based on specific filtering criteria. Here's the information that it's pulling out. Here is the logic, and here's the output that we're looking for. So again, it's gone ahead. It's built out everything. It's also built out this Python script to go ahead and actually implement those instructions into code, which will actually go ahead and do the thing that we want it to do. And we can see a bunch of code over here happening in the background. So the plan is that it's gone ahead, it's created everything, and everything looks good. Testing successful. It verified that the search logic actually retrieved 2 plumbers, and everything looks good. So what we need from you is Airtable rating data. The test results showed rating 0 because the scraper initially found NA formatted like 4.7. You know, for some entries, I've refined the scraper to be better at this, but for existing records, you may want to manually update the ratings in Airtable to test the sorting logic. Okay, awesome. So it looks like it actually went ahead and solved that whole thing for us. Like I didn't even have to do that. And again, the reason why it actually went ahead and it found that problem and it fixed it was because we prompted it the right way with our project specs down here and our instructions. If we didn't give it a very crystal clear understanding of what it was looking to build, it wouldn't actually know to go ahead and correct that. But only because we specified what we wanted, it went ahead and took that action automatically for us. If I built this without these 2 files, it probably would have taken me like 8 times as long just to get to this part that we're at right now, thanks to the planning that we've taken to this point in time. So the next step is to connect in Telegram bot. And I'm just going to assume that it's actually gone ahead and created that, and we can test it with Telegram next. So I will begin setting up the Telegram bot and the decision engine in Gemini. I will tie these workflows together. So far, there's no errors so far. So now we'll go to the next section, which is actually connecting in Telegram. So I'm going to message saying, connect Telegram so I can send a message from receive a reply. The brain should be Gemini and reply to me as a chat bot with natural professional personality. Route messages to the correct workflows. So it's going to call these individual workflows depending on what it is that we want. And we're going to say, based on the intent described, so based on what we say, find the right workflow that's detailed in project_specs.md. So it's going to look into this and it's going to pull out all of the workflows and determine, based on the workflows we have, what is the appropriate workflow to actually call. And also, like before, instead of having to go through a bunch of documentation with Telegram or with Gemini, we're going to go ahead and ask it to give us step-by-step instructions on how we can go ahead and do everything. So I'm going to go ahead and accept these changes. I'm going to paste this in. And the other thing is that I'm going to say, also give me instructions on how to get the Telegram API key and the Gemini API key and how to store my keys safely. So we'll go ahead and we will send this off. And so now we're going to get to the point where we're actually connecting in Telegram to our application. So it's now gone ahead and created Telegram_orchestrator.md. Okay. And so this is a workflow acting as the brain of the system. It receives messages from Telegram, uses Gemini to interpret the user's intent, and routes the request to the appropriate subflows that we have. Sweet. So that looks good. And it's also gone ahead and created a bot, like another Python script. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that is. So I can't really comment on that. It's written a bunch of code, and now it's given us the next steps here. So it's gone ahead. Oh, okay, here we go. So that Python script is the core brain of your system. Okay, so that's what it is. And of course, we could go ahead and type down here being like, hey, can you tell me more about this main_bot.python script? And it will go ahead and explain it all to us if we wanted to get more information. Intent intelligence, we're going to integrate Gemini 1.5 Flash to analyze your Telegram messages. It can distinguish between a request to find new leads and blah, blah, blah. Natural personality and workflow routing. Okay, so now we need specific API keys for this to work. We need to connect in Telegram. We also need to connect in Gemini. Okay, so I'm going to open So what it's asking for us to do is open Telegram and then search for @botfather. So inside Telegram, I think if we just opened a new channel here, let's just see. Okay, that doesn't look like it is. New group. Okay, maybe if we just go to like a normal, yeah, it's not working here. Let me just give another way to approach this in case you don't have like Botfather actually open right here. You can go to Google and you can type in Telegram Botfather, and that name always cracks me up. I can't believe that they named it the Botfather. That's just, I don't know, it just makes me smile every single time. It'll ask us to open up Telegram. Once we do that, you're gonna get access to the Botfather. Cool. So everything's looking good so far. So send the command new bot. Okay, so we're gonna type in new bot here, and you can see, by the way, tons of different commands that we have access to when you hit slash, but we're gonna specifically choose new bot, and it's gonna ask us for us to name the bot. And we can also see that it's following the instructions to name the bot and give it a user name. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and call this something like that. I think that's somewhat appropriate right over there. Oh, I just realized you guys actually can't see it because my face is blocking it. And then also we need to give it a username as well. So I'm gonna write in a bunch of text until you can see it there. Oh my gosh, that was a ton of gibberish. Just bear with me here. Okay, and anytime we're ending it, we need to end it with _bot for the username or camel case, bot with a capital B. That's required for the username. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it that. And unfortunately it gave me an invalid username. So I'm gonna try it again. And it looks like we're all set to go. Now, with that being said, I also recognize that you guys probably can't see this. So I'm just gonna type a bunch of messages here until you can hopefully see this. Okay, awesome. That was an excessive amount of messages. So let's just scroll up to the actual one where it is. Okay, here we go. So we have this API key right here. So this is exactly what our what Antigravity is looking for. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to follow along, and we're going to go back into our .env file and store this properly. So now we have this Telegram bot token. We're going to paste that in here and of course remove that hashtag. And then the next thing we're going to do, because that has been officially completed, is we're going to go and do the same thing for the Gemini API key. So we're going to go into the Google AI Studio, and this is at aistudio.com/projects or whatever. And that actually doesn't look like it's the correct link here. So we could go ahead and message back and be like, hey, that's not the correct link. Usually it gets it right all the time. But I think that what I'm going to do is see if I actually have this available, which is just to speed up the process a bit. It's app/API-keys. This is the URL that you're going to want to hit. And we need to create a new API key. So I'm going to call this delete because I want to make sure to delete this after this video. And we need to create a project, and I'm also going to call this project delete. Cool. We're going to create it, and it looks like I have received an error, and I think that's just because probably I have way too many different projects because I've created way too many videos on this on YouTube. But we'll go ahead and just select an existing project and click create. Awesome. Which brings us to the ability to copy that ID right here. So that is the API key that we're copying, and we need to go ahead and add that into our environmental variables. So it looks like, unfortunately, Gemini Antigravity did not want to put this API key name in here. So we'll just go ahead and copy what it had. Gemini_API_key, and then we're going to paste that in as well. We can click file and save, and we are good to go. Okay. Sweet. And so it has the security check. It's saying everything looks good. What it needs from us is these two keys. And the next action is going to be to update that, and it will perform the local test. Okay. So I'm going to accept all, and I'm going to say, please perform the test. Okay. So now we're going to see if we can actually connect in Telegram into our application in Antigravity. Cool. And so it says the bot is live. I've started the Telegram bot in the background. It is now listening to your messages. Okay, so let's give this a shot. Inside Telegram, remember, this is where we got our API key. We have this link. It says t.me/whatever. We're going to go ahead and open that up, and this is going to start the conversation with our new Telegram bot. We'll click this massive unavoidable blue button at the bottom that says start, and we are good to go. So that's the first message. I'm going to type something else in here. I'm going to say, hey, okay. And we should hopefully get a response back from our Telegram bot. And it looks like we did not receive a message back. So now we've encountered an error that we need to overcome. So I'm going to go back into our app, okay, and I'm going to say I sent a message from the Telegram bot, but it did not, but nothing happened. Can you please make sure that the connection between Telegram and our bot, or Telegram and Antigravity, is working properly? And can you tell me why it failed? Okay, I always like asking why here, because I feel like Antigravity is like kind of like a black box where unless you explicitly ask what's going on, it's just not going to tell you, and then you have no idea. So I would rather have an understanding of the problem so that I can work back and forth with Antigravity to solve this. So now what's happening is it's editing this main_bot Python script, which is like the intelligence layer is what it called it for our bot. And it said it's fixed and restarted. I've identified the issue. There's a 404 error when connecting to Gemini because the model name format required a prefix, models-Gemini 1.5-flash. And this is a very common problem. And even when I was like building this out, every single time it hits the same issue here. And usually it's because this model's outdated. I don't even think that this is going to work. We can go ahead and give it a shot, but I think we actually need to update this to a different model as well. So we can see I sent the message and it's still, and well, I guess you unfortunately can't see because my face is conveniently blocking this, but it still didn't work. So we need to go ahead and we need to say, can you use Gemini 2.0 Flash instead? Okay, I think this is the working model that it needs in order to get this working properly. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to send that, have a request to Antigravity to go ahead and change that. Maybe it gets it right the first time, maybe it gets it wrong. No problem. We just have to go back and forth until it actually configures the right Gemini model and it's working again. So it looks like it's edited. Okay. And we are going to try this one more time after it successfully run the code. Sweet. So I actually paused the video there for, I want to say like maybe 60 seconds just to not bore you with a 1 or 2 reruns, but I realized that there was a 404 error, okay? And it was because it wasn't connecting into the right model. And so usually when I was running this in the past, preparing for this video, it always connected into the wrong model that never seemed to work properly. And so I asked it to update it to Gemini 2.0 Flash, and then it still didn't work. So I just said, hey, you're still hitting the same error. And what essentially happened down here was I hit quota exceeded 429 error. What this means is I've exhausted the free tier, and unfortunately I can't make it work anymore with that free tier. So I have to use for the rest of this a paid tier. Now, granted, this will probably cost me like a cent, maybe 2 cents for this to work properly. And it should work completely for free for you. It's just that I've used this quite a lot over the last couple of days. So I ran into an error. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say I've updated the Gemini API key in the .env, which is right over here, this guy file. Can you update the Agentic Workflow? Can you update the Agentic Workflow? And now hopefully with a new key that's not hitting quota issue, it should be able to run no problem. Fingers crossed, you never know. If we do encounter another error, we'll just kind of go back and forth until it eventually works. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send a message here, and it has now gone ahead and replied to me. Unfortunately, my face is conveniently blocking it, but it says, hello, Jono, how can I help you with lead generation today? Wow, what an intelligent, personalized response. I feel very, very flattered by that. Okay, anyways, moving on here. That looks good. We can go ahead and test this out. And I'm going to say, can you please scrape 5 electricians from Miami, please? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna message that, and it says processing ... Again, unfortunately, you're not gonna be able to see that. And it says done, saved 5 leads into Airtable. Let's go ahead and take a look at these results. We can see that they just populated here with the electricians. Everything's good. This rating is still not working properly, but the Telegram bot is now up and running. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and forth and actually update the Airtable results here. So I'm going to say everything looks great. However, the Airtable is still not being updated properly with the ratings from the companies we are scraping from Google Maps. Can you please update this for me? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and send this off, and now it should look at 2 different agentic workflows that we've created. The first one is the scraper, okay? And we have a mismatch right now between the rating that it's pulling out here and saving right over here. And so I think what's causing it is, you can see this is like a capital R here, and maybe right over here it's an underscore R. So that's probably what's caused this whole thing. Now, Antigravity is actually like opening up this tab over here, and it's going through the process of scraping coffee shops in Toronto. It's just analyzing the results right now in real time. It's trying to figure out what's actually going on, why there's an error, and then it's live debugging it. Again, this is not something that I really usually like to see happen, just because this takes a lot longer. But in this case, it can actually pull back the exact result, hopefully update everything, and continue forward. So it's just going to think, based on the scraped results that it got, what the next step is. It's now updated this Google Maps sheet. We can actually click on this and see what's going on. And then hopefully we can accept this, and it should work the next time around. So it's just going to take a couple more seconds. Looks like it's running some more code. And it says the ratings are fixed with a star. Very enthusiastic, Antigravity. I appreciate it a lot. Cool. So just love the enthusiasm from AI. It just makes it so much funnier. So we're going to go ahead and give this a shot. And now I'm going to say, please scrape 5 photographers from Toronto. Okay, cool. So I have sent that off. It says, sure, I'll find you 5 photographers in Toronto for you. It's gone ahead, grab the leads. Now let's say in real time, as these photographers come into the spreadsheet, we have the ratings all sorted here. Okay, so anytime we encounter errors, really all we need to do is let our best friend over here, or the junior developer of Antigravity, know exactly what's going on here, and hopefully it should be able to solve those no problem. Now, this takes us to the last step in this particular workflow, because at this point in time, okay, we built something that works. It's able to connect into a data source like Airtable and store that online. But the issue is that this whole workflow only exists on our computer. If you gave this to a coworker, or if you didn't have access to your computer, you would not be able to actually run this particular agentic workflow. So what we need to do is we need to upload this into the cloud. And that brings us to the last prompt over here, which is going to be, please read modal instructions, which we haven't gotten to yet, and deploy this app in something called modal.com. Now, what modal.com is it's like infrastructure that hosts our agentic workflows in the cloud, so that at any point in time, by anyone, anywhere, we can actually run these workflows. So let me kind of just break this down, because I think this is kind of important. If you're running this on your computer, anytime your computer dies, anytime anti-gravity cuts out, or the internet cuts, or whatever, you're not going to be able to run mission critical operations that we just built. And so the solution is to host it in the cloud, so that anywhere, anyone, at any point in time can run it. Both instances, like locally it's free, on the cloud it's free for up to like $30, which is an excessively large, I think in my opinion, amount of credits that Modal gives you. And there's a couple downsides to Modal that I'm going to quickly go over. When you host things locally, it runs instantly. So as soon as we hit run here, it gets like it's just instant. In Modal, sometimes it's a couple seconds delayed, just because it's like an old computer. When you want to do something, you have to turn the computer on, it runs, and then the computer shuts off. And so same kind of deal when you send a request to Modal to actually go ahead and scrape leads. It might take a couple, like half a second or a second, to actually spin up the agentic workflow, run it, and then shut off. And then typically speaking, if you're dealing with like most agentic workflows, this isn't a problem, but there can be there's no timeout issues locally, but in the cloud there could be. So what I mean by that is if you're running an agentic workflow and it takes 10, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes that could be problematic in the cloud, and we can talk about how to overcome that. And then the last, and we'll get back to that later on, but the last thing here is authentication. If you want to be ultra secure, you can authenticate your webhooks and all that kind of stuff online, just because technically it is exposed to everyone if they knew the webhook to send data to. So that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, we'll continue on with the setup here. And what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to paste in the modal instructions. So when you log into Modal and you go to your dashboard, you're probably going to encounter some setup scripts, and it's going to be like, hey, copy this code and do whatever with it and whatnot. I would just ignore all of that, because we actually have our own script that we're going to use. And this is going to be down below in the description for free. I'd highly recommend just copying all of this and going back into our project, and we're going to add another script. We're going to right click on the Explorer, add a new file in the root folder, so I don't want it in any of these other files like temporary executions and instructions. We're going to call this modal instructions. Again, name is arbitrary. This is more for you to be able to understand what's going on, but we're going to paste this in. Let me explain what's going on here. So essentially with modal, there's a bit of a setup where we have to connect Antigravity and modal together so we can deploy our Antigravity workflows in the cloud. By default, these two are not connected. And if you were to run their setup script, it might take you an hour or two, like it took me, just to figure out exactly how to do this, because you're going to run into 1,000,001 bugs or errors along the way. And with this is just like a setup guide, bypassing all of the errors that I encountered, so that hopefully you can get this done incredibly quickly and you don't have to go through all the mistakes. If you do go through mistakes, it'll be substantially faster to kind of like work your way through them, rather than having to depend or rather than having to do it all on your own. Okay, so that's it. Now there's a lot of other solutions out here that you can use. Like you can use render.com to go ahead and do this. You can also use Replit to do this as well. These are other solutions that you can deploy these agentic workflows in the cloud with. But the reason I like Modal primarily is just because they have something called a command line interface. That's jargon for just essentially saying that Antigravity, when you publish things online, it can actually see the logs and the errors online. It can help you troubleshoot in real time by actually connecting into Modal and seeing what's going on, why it's causing errors, and fix it in real time. I don't think, I could be wrong here. I could very well be wrong, but I'm not sure you can do the same thing with Render or Replit. And for that reason, I just think that this is like the most friendly non-coder way, even though it's a bit more unfriendly at the beginning to get the project online. But once it's actually online, it's way more friendly to be able to actually go through and debug everything for you. So in case you ever get stuck, which can happen, Antigravity is going to be able to solve it for you on your behalf without you having to really do that much. So with that being said, we've gone in, we've uploaded this modal instructions. We're going to go ahead and save this file over here so that we can actually call it. And then we're going to go back to our prompts over here, and we're going to paste this last thing in here. So we're saying, read these instructions and deploy this app in modal.com and store all of the secret keys and passwords safely inside modal.com as secret keys and environmental variables. So again, what's going on is we're deploying this, okay? And we have all of these secret keys, but this is on our computer. We have to store these secret keys in the cloud so that it's accessible in Modal. But if you store them the wrong way, you can run into privacy concerns where all of a sudden people could potentially access these keys. And so what we're doing is we're saving this in a way that it's completely secure and safe. This is how every major software company does it, through environmental variables or similar things like this. And so we're just essentially prompting Antigravity to create these environmental variables on our behalf. Okay, so it's running some code. Okay, it's analyzing our scripts and the environmental variables, and it's going to start deploying this into the cloud. But it says we need to authenticate with Modal. So before I deploy, you need to authorize the connection between your machine and Modal, because currently Antigravity and Modal aren't connected. Just like Airtable wasn't connected, just like Gemini API wasn't connected, just like Telegram wasn't connected, Modal isn't connected either. So I'm going to say, please run the connection with Modal. Okay, and what it's going to do is it's going to pop up a new window here, okay, and it's going to ask us to essentially connect into it just by saying authorize. So this will happen hopefully in a matter of a couple seconds here. And what I'm going to do is return back once this is all good to go. Okay, cool. And it's still working away. It doesn't actually look like I had to authenticate because I already authenticated with Modal. But usually it will pop up another page and it will say, hey, please authenticate with us, and just click authorize. Now, we've also gone ahead and we've stored these secret keys in Modal. If you actually want to see all of these secret keys in Modal, what we can do is we can head over to modal.com/secrets, okay? And we can actually see these secret keys that were created a minute ago. And this is where our Gemini key is, where our Airtable key is, all of that kind of stuff is going to be stored right there secretly for us. Cool. And it looks like it's just finishing up here and finalizing everything. If we actually look up at the scripts, we can see that there's a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of red text that looks scary. And I'm sure while setting this up, Antigravity came across a lot of different errors. But the cool thing is that without me having to say anything more, it's gone ahead and bypassed all of those particular errors, and it solved it, and it has deployed it inside of Modal. And everything's looking good. And then the second half of this script here that we had, or this prompt, was to set the Telegram webhook to the Modal URL. Because right now, this Telegram bot, okay, this is sending data to our Antigravity project, but we don't want it in Antigravity anymore. We want to send this to the live workflow that is currently in the cloud, okay? And so that's the next thing. And then we also want to confirm that it works by actually grabbing data from Airtable. And so we're saying, hey, before we actually play around with this, test it out, make sure it works on your end so that by the time it gets to us, hopefully it does work. So it said the Telegram lead generation bot is now fully hosted in the cloud on modal.com. We can go over to Modal, okay? And we can go to apps over here, and we should be able to see our Telegram lead gen bot is now officially in the cloud. We can see that it looks like it's working right over here with 2 calls. There was a couple errors, I guess, as well as it was testing it out. It must have been able to overcome those. So everything's looking good. And if for whatever reason it breaks and it doesn't work, again, you can just always message down here, and Antigravity is going to work with you to solve the problem. Everything looks good in terms of security, stability, everything looks good. I performed a remote test against your Modal endpoint. The log confirms everything was successful. Gemini was successful. Final confirmation, open your Telegram bot and send over this. So find 2 dentists in Miami. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to type this out. Find 2 dentists in Miami. Okay, so I have sent that message off. And let's see if it responds back to me, which it looks like it's not. So it looks like something has, oh, okay, it says actually it has. Sure, I'll find 2 dentists in Miami for you. Okay, so again, if you recall, we were talking about how it spins up here. So spinning up means that it's not an instantaneous response. It took like 2 seconds for it to actually execute that before it gave me the response. And then it said no leads were found. Okay, so it said that nothing was found. I'm just going to go ahead and cross-reference that with Airtable. And I'm going to say the connection works between Telegram and Modal, but when I go to scrape dentists, let's just say, in Miami, it says no leads found. Can you please figure out why this is happening? Tell me the problem and solve it. And so this is the beautiful thing about Modal, is that Antigravity can still access Modal logs. It can still figure out why it's breaking. And this is really powerful because in the world of like web apps and coding and all that kind of stuff, when you deploy things in the cloud, oftentimes that's when a lot of the errors are so difficult to solve because it's just really hard. It's hard enough to deal with problems on the local terminal, but it's a million times harder to solve any problems once things go into production, because oftentimes it's not directly tied to your particular environment over here, and things can break between the crossover between local and online. But because Antigravity can connect into Modal and get all these logs and issues, it can actually connect in, solve everything for us without us having to do everything. And that's why I really love Modal over here. It may take a couple back and forths between the two to figure this out, but that's okay. We'll solve it, and this should be live in no time. Cool. So it looks like it's just wrapping up here. So the scraper improved and redeployed. I have identified why the modal deployment was returning the no leads found and have applied an ultra robust update to the scraping engine. The problem was when running from a cloud data center like Modal, Google Maps often presents a before you container cookie content screen. Our initial scraper didn't know how to agree to the terms, so was stuck on the splash screen seeing 0 results. So it's gone ahead, it has updated it, and now it can run this again. So I'm going to say please scrape, and I say please just because I'm Canadian and I feel genuinely bad to say to not say that to AI. Please scrape 5 landscapers from New York. Let's go ahead and send off the same thing right over here. And in a matter of a couple seconds, we should receive a response back. It says, sure, I'll find 5 landscapers in New York for you. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything works the way it's intended to, we should be able to grab those leads, upload them right into our Airtable, and be able to retrieve them from Telegram. Okay, so it looks like it's sent another message saying processing. So it looks like we hit an error here. It says, sorry, I hit a snag while scraping. No problem. We're going to go back to Antigravity and solve this. And I'm going to paste in a message here. I encountered another error while web scraping the results. Telegram worked and I got this response, meaning that the web scraper didn't work. Can you please tell me why and fix this problem in Modal so it does not happen again? I also want you to test this web scraping workflow in Modal and add the data to Google or to Airtable to verify it works properly. And I'm going to say, here's the message I got from Telegram. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, fire this off, and see what it gets back for us this time. And again, these errors happen all the time. We just need to go back and forth with Antigravity, ideally understand what's going on, and present the message that we got from Telegram as to why this happened. But in all honesty, I probably should have chosen a better example than web scraping, just because what we're dealing with is not necessarily errors with Agentic Workflows or Telegram or even Modal. It's really just errors with web scraping in general, which would not be applicable to literally any other Agentic Workflow that we deployed, because anytime you're dealing with web scraping, there's 1,000,001 variables on top of, just any ordinary Agentic Workflow that could cause it to fail, and we're unfortunately encountering those. So this is more of a byproduct of web scraping rather than actually Agentic Workflows. So this shouldn't happen for pretty much anything other than web scraping. Okay, so it looks good, and it says the Airtable permissions identified and fixed. I've found the error. Here is the problem. The service column in your Airtable is currently set as single select or multiple select field, and it is configured to not allow the creation of new options via the API. Okay, so technical error, insufficient permissions to whatever. When the bot tries to save as a new category, this isn't already a predefined choice. So essentially, this can't be created. So that's probably the error here. So yeah, the fix is so this never happens again. Please go to your Airtable base, right click on the service, column header, select edit field, and change the field to single select to single line text, and then save. Okay, and this is the service. Okay, awesome. So we'll go ahead and we'll edit this field, and we're going to change this from single select to single line text, save this, and hopefully that should save or fix everything moving forward. So with that update, hopefully it works now. We just need to test this one more time. So I'm going to do, let's say, coffee, scrape me 5 coffee shops in Miami. Let's go ahead and see if that works. But yeah, big thing worth pointing out here is that I would always ask it to do the testing before. So I want you to test the web scraping workflow in Modal before having me do it, because it actually ended up testing it again and it crashed one more time in this, and then it retested it again, and then it actually went ahead and worked. So hopefully, with all that being said, it's going to fire off this time properly. So it says, sure, I'll scrape 5 leads for you. It came back and said saved 5 leads to the database, and we can see the coffee shops over here. So that is essentially the first workflow completely built out. We have a Telegram bot that we can send messages and receive messages back. We can call whatever workflow we want, and it will go ahead and actually run that agentic workflow, add or scrape data from Google Maps, upload that data into Airtable, let us know that it's actually been confirmed. We can also retrieve that data from Airtable as well, and it will let us know which data we pulled back in Telegram. So that's pretty cool. We're also able to add on an interface like Telegram. You don't have to just use Telegram. You can use WhatsApp. You could use text messages. You could use really whatever interface you want to. We just use Telegram because it was the easiest here. And we also deployed this on the cloud, meaning that anyone, anywhere, at any time can access this. It doesn't just have to be you, it can also be your team. All right, guys, so we have officially completed the first project. If you made it this far, congratulations. Just before we move on to the second project, I want to point out something important. We never actually got emails from the first project, and the reason why we didn't do that is because I didn't want to sidetrack us from an anti-gravity / agentic workflow and web building, masterclass and go into web scraping. That was not the purpose of this. When you're web scraping, a lot of errors come into play, and I just wanted to avoid that and keep it nice and simple. Now, if you guys want to be able to go ahead and grab these emails, you will need to do it by scraping the individual websites, and how to do that is by using an additional prompt, and I'm going to include that in this prompt guide as an optional next step if you want to do that. Now, the next build that we're going to be focusing on is building out a web application, which is really cool. It's a different type of build, but specifically, we're actually going to be integrating this into the same kind of structure that we built before, where we're going to take that Airtable data that we collected and we're going to model this in a web application. So it's going to be an analytics dashboard that looks something similar to this. Now, I think this is really, really important for any business out there, but a lot of times people's eyes glaze over anytime analytics is mentioned, because I feel like until you see the true value of how it could actually benefit your life, it's easy to skip over as just something that's boring. But I can tell you personally, running a 7-figure business that I sold, this is one of the most important things I did. I can't tell you how many times people ask me questions about, hey, which marketing source should I get? Or what website, like how should I design my website to maximize conversion rates, or whatever the case may be. And the reality is that all these questions, nobody can really answer for you. You can't answer, I can't answer, nobody else can answer. But what can answer that question for you is analytics. So if you track this kind of stuff, and if you model that in an analytics dashboard, you're going to be able to have pinpoint accuracy as to what's working and what's not working, so that you can double down on initiatives that are going to get you close to your goal. So if your goal is to make more money, you might have a question like, hey, should I go after plumbers or should I go after electricians? Which is going to make me more money? And you might have an inclination, but that inclination could be wrong. But the data is certainly going to be right. So if we track stuff like this, then we can know for sure where you should double down on. So with that being said, I want to turn this analytics dashboard into a sexy idea that's actually going to benefit your life. So with that being said, let's go ahead and build this out. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to add a new project to Antigravity. So we're going to hit File up here, and we are going to go into creating a new window. Okay. And just like before, we're going to create a parent folder that contains the entire project. So I'm going to go into my Antigravity folder here and create a new project. And this is going to be Masterclass web app project, or some long convoluted name that is arbitrarily difficult. Okay, cool. So empty folder, we're going to open this up and we are good to go. Just like before, the first 80%, at least what I perceive to be the first 80%, is actually just going ahead and planning everything out. So we're going to do that. And very similar to before, we have to start with an instructions file. But this time we're actually going to use a different file, which is going to be down below for free for you guys to download, called web_app_instructions. And this is going to be slightly different because the way you want to set up this project in Antigravity is going to be different, because web apps are different than agentic workflows. And so we have to account for that difference. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy that file and create a new file here called web app instructions, okay, .md, and paste it in here. Same kind of deal as before. Essentially, we are turning our text prompts over here into shippable web apps. AI obviously can guess, and it can make mistakes. And we want to correct the system so that we have the best chance of building out what we want in the quickest time frame possible. We have two files that are important like before, like this web app instructions file, and also the project specs that just go over everything about the project. It goes over all of these details like user inputs and constraints, and it also goes over what we're actually building and also what we're not building so that we don't go down a rabbit hole building things we never intended to in the first place. Also defining what done looks like so that we know when to stop, and any project requirements that we want to add, you can go ahead and add on anything onto this. But let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So let's say we're building an analytics dashboard like this. We want it to look good across all different devices. So on desktop, on phone as well as iPads, right? All of it. We're going to get into this later on, but those are the kind of requirements that we want to build into this project so that it's good out of the box. Beyond that, we want to make sure that it actually fixes or corrects itself and improves over time. We're going to build out a file structure, and we have a bunch of rules on how it should behave. The file structure is going to be different than before, okay? But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and talk about that in a couple seconds here. We're going to copy in our first prompt and we're going to paste it in and build out this file structure. Just make sure to go ahead and save this file. Okay, so we'll send this off, and Antigravity, or our junior developer, is going to take every single step and let us know what it's doing. So first of all, it's analyzing our web app instructions. It's going to think about what to do. We can actually see in real time these thoughts happening. Again, more thoughts are happening down here. We can actually see it hit a snag, and it's going to go ahead and hopefully, improve itself and move on to the next step. Looks like it accomplished that. It's created our project specs, and we can see here that it has done decently well at kind of doing this, because I think we talked about an analytics dashboard already, but we need to expand on this and make sure that it is as clear as possible, okay? And so what we're gonna need to do next is we're gonna need to actually add in all the details to that particular project specs file. You can also see here that it's building out this entire project structure. Now, this project structure is using Next.js and Tailwind. In a nutshell, if you guys are unfamiliar with this, these are coding frameworks to help you code web apps. Next.js is JavaScript, so it helps us build the app. Tailwind is all about designing, so it helps us style things. Like this button down here is blue. That's because of Tailwind or because of styling. There's a lot of different styling frameworks out there, and there's a lot of different coding frameworks, but we're just using these two popular ones. But so Tailwind will allow us to do things like style. Okay, awesome. And this is the default kind of file structure when it comes to building out web applications. Now, for most of this, I'm not actually going to cover it because it's almost irrelevant. All of this kind of stuff is just under the hood. It's things that are there. They serve a function, but you don't really need to know what they are in order to get the job done. If you ever have questions, you can always message Antigravity and it'll explain everything, or you can message ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the case may be. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to move forward over here. We can see, just like before, we have this reply structure, which it's going ahead and following. So it's going to first start off with the plan and then what it needs from us, which is the project specs, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and read this next prompt here and then implement it. We're going to build a very simple analytics dashboard for lead tracking. The app should get data from Airtable. So all the data we collected in the first project is going to be what we're using in the second project here. Just one caveat is I went in and I just created a bunch of statuses here. And I also created a bunch of deal values for deals that we closed just as mock data. So the idea is you come in here, you grab these leads, you get them on the phone, your email, you set up a call. Hopefully some of them turn into paying customers. And the ones that turn into paying customers, we would mark as contract one, and we'd assign a deal value to them so that we can display this data in our analytics dashboard. Okay, so that's all I've done. It's just edited some of the data, but we're going to display this in a clean, modern dashboard, and we're going to show things like the total amount of leads and revenue and so on and so forth. We'll go over most of this later on when we can actually visualize it once it's built. And we also want to have the ability to filter based on things like date ranges. So when we actually got these leads, you know, from last year to this year and compare and all that kind of stuff. And also based on the ratings as well. Maybe companies that have higher ratings on Google are more likely to close, and also based on the services, because we might want to know, for example, what actually converts better, plumbers or electricians, so we can double down on the leads that are actually converting into paying customers, and so on and so forth. It's going to be deployed on an app called Verso, which we've already gone over. We're going to upload our secret keys and all of that kind of stuff. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy this in to Antigravity right over here, and this is going to act as the project specs. So it's going to update this particular file with all of this information so that hopefully when we go to build it out, it's just going to get much better results right away. We can see that everything's starting to change. We have a lot of red stuff that's been deleted and a lot of green stuff that's been added in. I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and click accept all, and let's look at the results. I've updated the project specs with your specific requirements for lead tracking analytics dashboard. So here's the plan. We've pretty much gone through everything. Here's the next step. We need to create the Airtable API utility and Next.js API route to fetch the data securely. Okay. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on Airtable, and then we're going to build out some of the UI components, and then we're going to focus on the responsive design. So what we need from you, here's the next step. Could you specify the field names in your Airtable base, specifically the fields used for revenue, status, all of that kind of stuff? And then we also need to set up the .env file to share our passwords back and forth. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. But one thing that's kind of interesting is we can actually just copy files back and forth between certain projects. So for instance, I could go ahead and create a folder here called instructions. Okay, and in instructions, I can go into the past project and I can copy Airtable saved. I think it's Airtable. No, it's Airtable search leads. I'm going to copy this by right clicking and hitting copy. And then we're going to go in here and paste it in. So we can actually draw from past projects on how we want to actually go ahead and pull things in. Now, this isn't exactly perfect. This isn't the exact kind of like build that we're looking for specifically for this web application, but it could be a good starting point. So the other thing that we could do is also create that .env file. So I'm going to go ahead and create this .env, okay? And we can actually go ahead and paste in all of these over to this new .env file. We don't need things like Telegram, for example, so that we can delete. And we also don't need things like modal, and we don't need things like Gemini API key, but this is good to go. So I'm going to save this, and I'm also going to save this file as well. And now I'm going to say I've added the .env file with all of the information you should need. Can you please connect Airtable based on that information? You should be able to search for the columns yourself. So right now it's like asking us, can you tell us the specific fields and all that kind of stuff? But I don't want to do any of that. I want Antigravity to do all the heavy lifting for me. So I'm going to go ahead and check out that. And I'm also going to say I've also added in the folder instructions and added the file, and we can actually have a tag here, and I can do Airtable, and we can see this file we're now referencing right over here, so it knows what we're talking about, to draw inspiration for how we could grab data. Use this as reference only. And so the whole idea here is like, this isn't really actually that beneficial. You don't even have to necessarily copy this, but I just wanted to show how you could easily move files and folders back and forth very easily from within Antigravity. And honestly, you could even just go ahead and tell Antigravity down here, hey, I want you to go into my previous project and grab it. Like I manually copied it over But you also don't even have to do that. You could just message Antigravity and say, hey, grab that last instructions folder and copy it into this project, and it will go ahead and do that for you. So that's the power of Antigravity, is not only does it remember only stuff in this project, but it also has access to all the information from past projects as well. We can see that it's analyzing this, okay? It's also analyzing the .env file for all of the secret keys that we need. And now it's gonna go to work for us, writing a bunch of code to hopefully connect into Airtable. Cool, so it looks like it's gone ahead and executed everything. We've added in quite a few files, or edited quite a few files, and it's written a lot of code for us that we had to do nothing personally ourselves, which is pretty awesome. Let's take a look and see what it said. I've successfully connected an app to your Airtable base and built a premium modern lead tracking analytics dashboard. Okay, so it's secured the Airtable integrations. Okay, that's good. Modern design, real-time dashboard analytics, and it's responsive. So now what we can do is the app is currently running on this local host. So we can go ahead, test it out, and then the next action is to actually deploy it on Vercel. So in a new browser, we're gonna paste in localhost 3000. Okay, what localhost is technically this is not actually on the internet. This is a file on your computer that's displayed on the internet. You could access this without internet connection, but yeah, this is just like a virtual server that you're spinning up on your computer. So here is our Airtable dashboard. Okay, so let's just compare and contrast the two, where we're actually pulling it in. Let's just see if we're getting it right. So it looks like we have 21 leads down here, which is correct, and we have a certain amount of revenue. I'm just going to assume that that's also correct as well. We have contracts 1, we can count that up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm just going to assume all of the data is right. We could see things like the conversion rate, and now we can actually start modeling this out into particular graphs, which is really freaking cool. And ideally, what we'd also be able to do is we'd be able to see plumbers as well. So plumbers, maybe not the best people to go after. Let's see photographers. Okay, wow, we have a 40% conversion rate on photographers. And so this is the kind of stuff that you can build with analytics dashboards, where all of a sudden you should be able to get pinpoint accuracy on what's working and what's not working. Just imagine for a second, you have a business and you recognize through this dashboard that plumbers are bringing you no money and photographers are bringing you tons of money. It would be a no-brainer to double and triple down on the lead generation sources that are actually bringing you income, right? So we can obviously go through, we could add so many additional things on here. One of my favorite things to do is, of course, do date ranges as well. So you could see like this month versus last month versus the month before that, and all of that kind of good stuff, right? And yeah, you can see all of the leads listed in a table. We could add as many different graphs and charts as we want to. And just one other thing that I think is worth noting. At the time, we haven't even given it a user interface to copy. But what we could do is we could go to a website called Dribbble, okay? And this is like a graphic design website where we can actually find beautiful designs. So we could do sales analytics, dashboard, for example. And we can draw inspiration from all of these other dashboards that designers have gone in and created. Now, I'll put a major caveat here by saying the more complicated it is, the harder it is typically for Antigravity to kind of build out. But for most of these, it does a fantastic job actually copying it. So I just have a very simple dashboard right here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screenshot of this dashboard. Okay, and I'm going to paste this into I'm going to paste this into Antigravity. And I'm going to say, I really like the design on this dashboard. Can we please draw inspiration from this and redesign our dashboard to look something like this? Okay. Now what's going to happen is Antigravity is going to actually look at that given screenshot. It's going to open it up, analyze it, and it's going to use that to now go ahead and design the newest, or the dashboard that we just created. So it's going to change our screen, okay, from what we had before at the localhost 3000. it looks like we have encountered an error. This is totally normal. Anytime we're in the process of updating things, it's breaking and changing everything. So as you're kind of like waiting, you should be expecting an error until it's completely done, and then it will fire up again and work. So we're just going to wait, but we can see that it's editing the charts, it's editing the styling of the sidebar and the global CSS. Again, CSS cascading styling sheets. This is the styling of the page, so it's going to copy the same kind of look. All of this kind of stuff is going to be changing. We can go ahead and accept these changes in a matter of a couple seconds. It should be good to go. Cool. And it looks like it's pretty much done here. So it's redesigned the dashboard. All we have to, and it's telling us exactly what it's done, but now we just have to go back and look at it. So that looks really nice. I actually like this design significantly better than the last design. And so, yeah, looks great. Everything I'm happy with. There's 2 additional steps that we need to take in order to deploy this. Number 1 is quality assurance or quality control. So we need to actually make sure that everything is working the way we actually want it to work. So first of all, how we do that, and usually is more of a manual process than anti-gravity going ahead and doing anything for us. So what I mean by that is the first thing we want to do in order to deploy this is make sure, does it actually look the way we want to? Aesthetically, are we happy with it? If we're not, we could go back to anti-gravity and say, hey, I want these icons to change. Right down here, and anti-gravity would go to work for us, going back and forth with the design. The next thing is we need to click these buttons. Do they actually work? And right now the answer is no, none of these additional buttons work. All we did was we copied one design right over here, which contained all of these other kind of like sidebar tabs. And so right now we haven't programmed anti-gravity to go ahead and build those out. So either we could fully remove them, or we could go ahead and, I don't know, actually create pages for all those kind of things. And again, every single page or whatever, we'd have one or multiple prompts to go ahead and build out. And so, yeah, you just want to go ahead and make sure every single button is working the way that you'd want it to work. Now, for this example, I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to leave it as is because we just want a simple analytics dashboard, and I'm not super concerned with building an entire web application here, but I think you get the point. You need to click around, make sure that all the functionality is actually working as intended. Another thing that's really worth doing is hitting Shift Command or Shift Control C and opening up the developer tab. If you're not able to do that, you can hit the 3 dots here, go to more tools and developer tools right over here, and we can hit this button right there. Okay. And what this does is it allows us to see dimensions here. So we can turn it into responsive mode and start moving the entire dashboard over, right? And we can see here that's problematic at these dimensions, 754 by, and this is the width, by 1149 height. There's an issue with this background here. Okay. And so we could go back to anti-gravity and say, hey, I want you to fix that because it looks good here. It starts cutting off here and then it looks bad underneath that. And so we just need to fix that. So, and rather just choosing responsive, we can also go ahead and choose specific dimensions for iPhones like SE or Pixel 7, or we could choose whatever it is that we want to, right? And I think you get the picture. So for example, we can go back to anti-gravity and say we're having problems with the UI responsiveness. Can you make sure this app looks great on desktop, tablets, and mobile devices as well? Also on mobile devices and tablets, please show a hamburger help menu for the sidebar. And what I mean by that is, like, if we take a look and we kind of dive in here, I just don't like how as it's going down, it's still showing the sidebar and everything's going to cut off. I want this to be like a nice little hamburger helper right at the top here. So I'm going to fire this off, and then hopefully anti-gravity should be able to go ahead, build it out, and solve this whole thing for us. So let's just wait until this is all done, and then we'll see the result. Cool. So we can see that it's edited quite a few things. It's gone ahead, changed the sidebar. and this page, which I think is just like the generic landing page. It's just one page here that contains all the code. I could be wrong. It's changing the charts here and the global styling, and it's gone ahead and optimized the mobile navigation, adaptive header like we asked for, responsive grid system, fluid table. I mean, you don't even need to know necessarily what all this stuff means other than it's making progress to hopefully make this more responsive. Now, when we come back here, it looks beautiful, right? This looks way cleaner for all different mobile devices. And so with one prompt, we've literally gone ahead and changed everything. Now, if you go really far extreme, yeah, it's going to break, but no tablet, no phone is only 135 pixels wide. So this is almost never going to happen. Usually like the smallest phone would be something like this. So it should work across pretty much every single device, which is great. So we can go ahead and we can change anything we want to with just one or two prompts inside Antigravity. So now what we're going to do after the quality check has been completed is we actually want to go ahead and deploy this. And before, again, we are using Modal to deploy our Agentic Workflows. We're going to use a different app this time to deploy the web applications. And specifically what we're going to be using is we're going to be using Versal. So you're going to need to, first of all, create a free account here. Okay, I'm going to open up a new tab just so you can see the landing page. And we also need to have a free account on GitHub. Now, what GitHub is it's like a place where you can upload your code online. So instead of it being stored exclusively on your desktop, inside Antigravity, we're just going to take all these files and all these folders and we're going to upload it to GitHub. So first of all, we're going to do that. So I'm going to type in github.com/new. You can also, once logged in, hit the top icon here and then go to repositories, and then you should be able to create a new repository right here. We're going to call this Masterclass Antigravity. Okay, and I just want to make sure that this is private, so it's not accessible to everyone on the internet. We'll go ahead, click create repository, and this looks good. Now, all of this code right here is exactly what we need. You don't necessarily need to know what this actually means, but what this is doing is it's sending code from here into GitHub, so it's online. Okay, so we're going to copy this by hitting this button right here. We're going to say, in our junior developer over here, can you please upload this web app to GitHub so we can publish it on Versal. I'm going to hit send here, and what our junior developer is going to do is literally take this entire project and they're going to push it onto GitHub. Now we have this file here called gitignore. What gitignore does is it doesn't upload certain files or folders for us. So for example, it's not going to upload our .env file right here. So this file is not going to be deployed to Versal. And this is a security feature so that we don't have our public keys accidentally online for somebody else to take and use. Okay, so we're going to circle back to this in a second. Just know that these keys are going to be removed from the upload based on gitignore. This is just a security feature that I want to quickly go over. On this page, we can refresh it and we will see the entire project that we just deployed here, but this time it's going to be online right over here. And in Versal, now what we can do once you've signed in for free is we can create a new project and we're going to connect it to our GitHub account. And I'm going to import this project we just created called Masterclass-Antigravity. And everything looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and click deploy. This typically takes 1 minute to deploy our GitHub project online. The problem is that it's not going to work right away because right now we don't actually have these environmental keys, right? So we actually need to add these to our project in GitHub, which is going to, or sorry, in Versal, which is going to be the next step before we can actually see this online. So as we're waiting for this to deploy, we can actually go ahead and add in all of these environmental variables. Actually, it looks like I should have added these in sooner, so we're just going to add them in once the project's actually been deployed. So we're going to continue to the dashboard here, and we need to hit environmental variables. So I'm going to search for that. Doesn't look like it's here. We're going to go to settings here, and then environmental variables right over here. And now we're going to go ahead and add in our environmental variables. And all we're doing is we're just copying the blue text, which is the key, and then the value in white. So we don't want to include the equal sign. We're going to do Airtable key, and we're going to paste in this as the value. As the value here. Then we're going to add another 2 keys. The next one is going to be Airtable base. Okay. And then this is going to be the base. And we're going to add in Airtable name. And this is going to be leads. Now, this data is secured and nobody's going to be able to access this from the internet. This is how you store secret keys so that they're not accessible to anyone. Now we're going to go back to our project and we're going to click on the app and see if it works. Okay, so now we can see the app, but it's not actually pulling in the data like we want it to. And usually when you create environmental variables like we just did, in order for us to actually see it, unfortunately, we have to redeploy the project one more time. So we're gonna go ahead and upload this again. So inside Versal, we're going to click on build logs here, okay, right over here. And then we're going to hit these 3 dots and we're gonna click redeploy project and we're gonna choose redeploy. And then hopefully in a couple seconds, this should get the project up and running and we should be able to see the actual data. Cool, so it looks like it's been deployed. We're gonna refresh the page here and now all of our data has come through, okay? So once we redeployed it by adding the environmental variables, everything's good to go. However, if for whatever reason this didn't work for you, your best friend over here, Antigravity, should be able to solve any problem you have. You can always type in what's happening and it will troubleshoot with you to go through the entire setup to make sure that you can get it up and running. Anytime you're sending web apps from your computer to the cloud, there's a host of different problems that can happen. We built a pretty simple web app, so there fortunately wasn't really any problems that we encountered, but I have literally had some pretty difficult problems. And anytime I run into them, again, all I do is ask AI, and Antigravity is a great place to start because it already has the entire project and understands the scope and everything, so it should be able to diagnose it hopefully pretty fast. Now with that being said, we've gone ahead in project number 2 and we've created a completely customizable web application that literally would have otherwise taken potentially days or weeks or potentially even months to get up and running in a matter of probably, if you were to redo this, knowing what you know, like 10 minutes. Just as a comparison, when I built out an analytics dashboard like this in another tool, before artificial intelligence and vibe coding and all that kind of stuff, this took me like 2 months to figure out how to do what we did in like 10 minutes. So it's insanely fast. You can build out real life applications really, really quickly. Now moving forward here, we're going to move on to the third and the final project of this masterclass, which is going to be building out a Gmail agent that automatically runs our entire email inbox. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been using Gmail for like, I want to say 20 years now. And at some point in time, this was literally a 25,000 emails. So it was honestly disgusting to see that many emails in my inbox. But building out a workflow like this, we can automatically clear that. And we can do so many things here. So first of all, we can automatically sort incoming emails into custom labels that we create. Of course, we could also use the default Gmail labels as well. And then we can act on those individual categories. So for example, if we have a personal email coming in, well, we can go ahead and create drafts to those emails. And if we have accounting emails coming in, we can go ahead and forward that off to our accountant. We could also send this off to QuickBooks as well. If we have those annoying promotional social emails coming in, we can also go ahead and archive those. So you know the emails that are trying to sell you things you probably don't want, all of those things we can archive. Or if you get those social notifications from Facebook being like, this is the 75th notification of the day where Stacy liked your photo, then of course you can go ahead and remove those as well. And the last thing that we can do is we can upload all attachments that come into our inbox into Google Drive right over here, which is super useful. So what we're going to do is go ahead and build this out, and we're going to be using the same kind of planning phase that we had in the first project we built. So let's head over to Antigravity, and we're going to hit File and New Window, and we have to first go ahead and create a new project folder. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Inside my Antigravity folder, we're going to create something new. Masterclass-project-3. Awesome. And we're going to open up a brand new empty folder that we just created, which is going to contain all of our sub files and folders. Now, just like the first project, we're going to copy these instructions, which will be down below completely for free. And we're going to create a new file over here. And this is going to be called instructions.md. And we're going to paste those in. And of course, save this so that we can build out the project scaffolding like we did before right over here. Okay, so inside the prompts page, we're going to go ahead and copy this and just fire this off in Antigravity. Please read the instructions and build out the project structure right over here. And our free agentic workflow that costs approximately 0 cents is going to go ahead and read that file. And it's going to write some code to go ahead and build out this project file structure right over here. And of course, the next thing that we have to do is actually tell Antigravity in this project what it is that we're looking to build. So we're going to define what it is that we're essentially building, okay? And so that comes to the second prompt here. But before we just go ahead and throw this into Antigravity, I wanna show you more realistically how I'd go about actually creating this. So I would open up ChatGPT and I would spend like probably 60 seconds actually telling ChatGPT what it is we're looking to build. And I would get ChatGPT to create me a first round of this project specs file, and then I'm going to paste it into Antigravity to create a second round or a second revision to actually go ahead and create this. So all I'm doing is just scribbling my mental notes down in ChatGPT. It's going to edit it, Antigravity is going to edit it, and then we're going to get to the final product. So I'm building out an Antigravity agentic workflow. I need a concise prompt that I can give to Antigravity to build out my project specs MD file, which will cover all the project requirements. So let's kind of go through what we're actually going ahead and building here, and I'm going to compare this to the diagram. So first of all, we need to make sure that every 60 seconds we are checking Gmail to see if there are new emails coming in. Okay, that's the process of polling, okay, and we're going to be covering this in a bit as well. Then we want to categorize the emails, okay, into their respective labels down here. And then we want to go ahead and grab all the attachments, drop those into Google Drive. And then we want to also create draft email responses and so on and so forth. So I'm going to fire that off. That looks good to me. And then ChatGPT is going to go ahead and create this markdown file that I can go ahead and copy straight into Antigravity. So this looks good. Obviously, you'd want to go forward through this and make sure you're happy with it just so that it actually, you know, checks off all of the requirements that you're looking for. But assuming it does, you can go ahead, copy that, paste it right in here, and fire this off. Now, I'm just actually going to scroll up a bit here, and we can see, once again, we have the same response that we're always expecting. We have the plan down here, and then we have what's needed from us and the next actions. And we get that because in our instructions.md file, we always specify, here is the response format that we're looking for from Antigravity. So I've gone ahead and I've sent this off. We can see that a lot of stuff is changing down here. And if we open up that project specs file, it's gone ahead and it's created this whole thing. Now, obviously we want to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm actually going to, first of all, accept these changes, but then spend a couple seconds reading this. So we're building an agentic automation system that pulls Gmail every 60 seconds to process new emails. The system uses AI to categorize email, handle attachments by saving them to specific Google Drive folders, and generates draft replies for personal threads, all while maintaining the original inbox state. Okay, cool. So we have inputs, we have all of the workflows and the tools and all of that kind of stuff. So we're off to a really, really good start here. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we have to connect into Google Drive as well as Gmail. And if you recall, we did this with MCP using Airtable last time. And that's great, but unfortunately with Google products, it's a bit more complicated than MCP, which is why I saved this build for the end. But I'm gonna drop down below this free guide, which literally walks through every single button click you have to take to set this up properly. If you guys want to go through this step by step, you can download this as well, but I'm going to walk through this with you every single step of the way. So in order for us to connect Gmail and Google Drive into Antigravity, the first thing we have to do is head over to something called the Google Cloud Console. Okay, and this is just our way of giving permission to Antigravity to connect into Google Drive and also Gmail. Inside the Google Cloud Console, we're going to hit this box right up here. Okay. And when we hit the box, we're going to create a new project, and I'm going to actually, I have to choose the right account here. You can see I've hit project limits just because I've created so many tutorials doing this. So again, we're going to go to the Google Cloud Console here, and then I'm going to hit the same box. Okay. I'm going to hit new project, and we're going to call this Masterclass Antigravity. Okay, we don't need a parent resource here. We can just click create, and we're going to see Google creating this project right over here. When we get the green checkbox, we are good to go. Now we want to actually log into that project by again hitting this box and then checking or selecting Masterclass Antigravity. The first thing that we have to do inside of our new project that we just created is we actually have to enable the Gmail API as well as the Google Drive API. So in the search box up top here, we're going to search for Gmail API, click the first result, and then click enable. And then we're going to have access to connecting into Gmail from external applications. Okay, so Gmail, first step is good to go. We're going to do the same thing by searching for Google Drive API and then clicking the first link and then enabling Google Drive API as well, meaning that we can now hook applications into Google Drive. There is a couple steps that we have to take here. We're going to hit the hamburger helper next, and we need to go to API and services. We're going to go to OAuth consent screen. Okay. And what we're doing here is we're trying to give ourselves permission to log in to Google to authenticate our user, or like ourselves as a user. So you can kind of like, if you think about it, like just like you're logging into Gmail, we need to kind of like create like the ability for us to log in. So how we do that is we click get started here. We're going to create an app name. This is going to be Antigravity, and we can choose our own email. We're going to click next, choose external app, click next again, and then enter in our email address. So I'm just going to type in the same email address here and then click I agree to sign my life away and name my firstborn child after Google and all of that kind of good stuff. Click continue, create, and we are good to go for this step. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to head into the hamburger helper again, API and services, credentials, and we are going to click create credentials. We're going to choose OAuth client ID, and we are going to select the application type as desktop application. What we're going to do here is just click create, and I guess we can name this Antigravity too. Click create, and all we need to do from here on out is click download JSON. And this is what we are looking for in order to connect Antigravity into Gmail and Google Drive. Just one final step, which should be very, very simple. We're going to hit the hamburger helper, go to API and services, and then also go back to OAuth consent screen one more time. We're going to hit audience right over here on the sidebar and then scroll down the page. And I think my face is blocking this, but we have test users. We need to add ourselves as a test user here in order to be able to authenticate and connect Antigravity to Gmail and Google Drive. Just make sure that whatever email you're logging into is the one you're putting right over here. And now we are officially good to go. We can start the process of logging in and completing this authentication with Google, which took way more time than it should have taken, but fortunately, it's pretty much done. So this file that we just downloaded, I'm going to head over to Antigravity here, and I'm going to put it into my project. Okay. Now you can leave the name the same, but I'm just going to go ahead and change this to credentials.json. And this contains all of the information that we need. And you probably shouldn't share this like I am with you, but this is going to contain all the information we need to actually bridge the gap. Okay. So I know I've been saying that like 5 or at least 10 times, but this is the final time. I promise you that. So inside our prompts, we can select the next one. I've downloaded the credentials to authenticate Google APIs, Gmail and Google Drive. Please use the credentials.json file to set up OAuth authentication and verify that I have access to Gmail and Google Drive. We're going to drop this in here, click enter, and now Antigravity is going to take care of the rest for us. It's going to run some code, okay? And in a matter of a couple seconds, it should open up a new window in the internet for us to authenticate between Antigravity and Google. It's also creating new files here like OAuth setup and all that kind of stuff. Probably not necessary because we only really have to do this once, but you can see that it opened up this new window. We're going to select the same account that we're using, okay? And it's going to give us an error. Not an error, but it's going to say Google hasn't verified this app. And that's because I'm not a verified Google app developer. And chances are you're probably not either. That's okay. We're going to click continue here, and we're going to give access to Antigravity to be able to see, edit, and create and delete things in Google Drive, and also read, compose, and send emails inside Gmail. We're going to click continue. It's going to say the authentication flow has been officially completed. You may close this window. Okay, awesome. So that's looking good. We have completed this step, and now it's going to tell us what happened and what the next steps are. You will now create the Google Drive setup workflow, blah, 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 blah. So it's just giving us like an idea of what it thinks we should do next, but that's okay. We're just going to follow a different kind of flow here, which is going to be setting up the polling here. And so this is really important, and I'm going to paste this in here and fire this off. But essentially what polling is that we are checking to see if there's new emails coming into Gmail. So I'm actually going to go ahead and turn over to my Blackboard here so I can map this out. What polling is it's the process of Antigravity in this instance sending a request over to Google to ask if we have received any new emails. But the important thing about polling is that it's not an instant thing. It happens at some interval. That interval could be once every minute, once every hour, once every day, once every month, and so on and so forth. And when we send this request over to Google, what Google's going to do, or Gmail, is it's going to reply to us. And it's going to tell us, hey, we have 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 incoming emails that have landed in the Gmail inbox. And so at this point in time, what we can do is we can process all of those emails. Okay. And so that's essentially more or less what polling actually is. Let's take a look and see what happened here. So, it looks like a lot of stuff has happened. Okay, perfect. So here is our last message right here. And it went ahead and it created this polling instructions here, okay, to continuously monitor the Gmail inbox for new unprocessed emails and mark them as processed after handling, okay? And that's a really important part here. Mark them as processed after handling. So there's actually a lot of stuff jam-packed into this that I want to cover before we move on to the next step. So we have polling. And with the polling, okay, we're only pulling emails in from the last 60 seconds, okay? The only email eligible for processing are those returned by the poll setup. If an email has the label AI processed, do not proceed with it. So let's go back to the Blackboard here because I want to explain a couple things that are going on here that are what I would define as safeguards in this setup, okay? The first one is the polling. We are polling every 60 seconds. Okay, so this is poll number 1 over here. This is poll number 2 over here. And then we have poll number 3 over here. Now, all of these are 60 seconds apart. Okay, 60 seconds, 60 seconds, 60 seconds. What this is saying is if we get an email coming in here, okay, we are going to process it in this 60-second time window. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to process it again in this next 60-second time window. That's just not going to happen because we're not extending this back 120 seconds. We're only extending it back 60 seconds to the start right here. Okay. And same kind of deal with this next window. We're not going to process it back like, multiple different polls. So that's the first safeguard in place. Why this matters is because we don't want to duplicate the same email. Like if, for example, we create a draft to this, we don't want to create, like, for instance, 1 draft, then 2 drafts, then 3 drafts, then 4 drafts. And then before you know it, there's like 10,751 drafts. And you're like, what the hell just happened to my Gmail inbox? So we just want to cut the noise and keep this at only 1. Okay. That's safeguard number 1. But I always like having multiple, I'm going to introduce one more safeguard here for you to kind of take a look at and understand how these systems typically work. And you don't need both. Technically, you just need one, but I'm putting in both anyways. So the next safeguard is adding a tag to the email. So email comes in to our inbox, okay? And we go ahead and we do a bunch of different things to it. We sort it using AI. So this is sort, and then we might create a draft, and I can't believe I actually misspelled sort there, and then we create a draft and so on and so forth. But the last step that we're doing here is we are going to add a tag onto this email, okay? And this tag is going to be called AI processed. And the reason why we're adding this tag is because when an email comes in again, and let's say it's a duplicate email, let's say this email was processed not once, okay, but it was processed instead twice, which is bad. But the second time it's processed, we can filter it right here and see, does it have the tag AI processed on it? And if it has this tag on it, then we are going to filter it out. But if it doesn't have the tag, meaning it's never been processed before, then we'd go ahead and we'd approve it and would continue down the flow. So we can filter out these emails depending on whether it's been processed before. And we know it's been processed before because every single time an email has been processed, we're going to add the AI process tag down here. Okay, so that's kind of like two guardrails that we have in place for this particular workflow. And also, I just want to make sure as well, we don't mark emails as read or remove them from the primary inbox. So this is a big no-no to me, but you can obviously set this up any way you want to. But the first thing is when an email comes in, we don't want to remove this inbox tag right here, because if you remove this inbox tag and say you mark something as accounting, okay, it's like this, for example. This doesn't have inbox. This email here, this email thread, we're not going to be able to find in the inbox, which means that this is going to get buried all the way down in accounting, and you might miss something that's really critical, for example. And the other thing is when we have emails come in, we want them to be marked as unread, so we know what we read and what we haven't read. We don't want it to, by default, mark it as read, because you might look at it and be like, oh, I've already read that before, when in reality, it was only AI that read the email. So we're kind of setting up some safeguards and all that kind of stuff for it to work the way we want it to. And the reality is again, like if you're building this out from the ground up, you're probably not going to know every single one of these things until you make a couple of mistakes, get your hands dirty, and you realize you should go ahead and change things. Okay, so that's essentially it. The polling logic and folder structure are now both partially implemented and verified. We've gone ahead, created the polling, created the drive structure. So it looks like we actually set up Google Drive at the same time. So I think it looked at the project specs here, and it may have jumped ahead of itself by creating Google Drive structure for us to be able to actually upload documents into it. That's okay. We're just going to circle back later on. If Antigravity jumped the gun, that's totally fine. Now what I want to do is I want to create a file called emaillabels.md. Okay, so we're going to accept these changes. We're going to paste this in here. We're going to fire it off. We're going to create this file right here. Let me explain what's going on here. Probably one of the most frustrating things about AI is getting it to work the way you want it to. And when, in this capacity, we want to sort emails into the right category, right? And the more information we provide Antigravity, the better it's going to be at understanding what a personal email is, what an accounting email is, what a promotions and social email is. And so what we're doing here is we're creating this document. I'm going to click on this document here that outlines all of our emails. We have category personal, which is this right here. And then we have category promotions and category social. And so we're labeling every single one of these categories, as well as, and hopefully it got this right, labeling, like, you know, our personal labels down here. And we're actually going to have to change this because it got it wrong. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to just consolidate this so that when Antigravity goes to label these things properly, it knows the name. It also knows the ID, and it has a description of what that label is, and also examples of what those emails actually look like, so it knows where to put each email. The problem here is that we don't have IDs, and IDs are really important because inside Google, we might look at these labels and be like, oh, that's accounting, or that's miscellaneous, or that's personal. But the problem is that Gmail doesn't read the labels with the names. They read the labels with IDs. And right now we don't have the right IDs. So I'm going to go ahead and say you didn't add in the right IDs properly for the Gmail labels. Can you please fix this? And so I think that's the first thing that I want to do. And I'm also going to say you also didn't add in all the labels that I have in my Gmail account. Please add in things like personal, for example, because right now it's missing this personal. And then I think it's also missing recruitment. And it's also missing, it looks like it does have miscellaneous. No, it's also missing miscellaneous too. And so on and so forth. And I'm also going to say you added in work/business, which doesn't exist. Please remove it. Okay, so we're going to send this off, but obviously Antigravity probably hallucinated something or didn't work properly, and it's made things up. Like, I just do not have custom labels like that. Okay, so we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to prompt it again to go ahead, edit this file so that we do get the right information in here. It's going to change hopefully a ton of additional things. It's going to let us know everything's done. And let's take a look here as well. So now it's good. Recruitment, accounting, sales, and this is the important thing. These ITs, like Gmail doesn't read it as the accounting label. It reads it as label _6104253 and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's defined everything. What it needs from us is, whatever. Cool. Now what we're going to do is we are going to go on to the next prompt over here, which is going to be using Gemini to classify each email returned by the poll into the right label here. And keep in mind, you can go ahead and you can create as many of your own custom labels as you want, but I'm just going to stick to these. Okay. So in this prompt, if you're following along with me, you'll want to change these from accounting, personal, sales, miscellaneous to whatever else it is that you're actually going ahead and using. So we're going to go ahead and fire this off. So first of all, we want to use Gemini to label it properly. And then we also want to just respect the fact that we don't process multiple labels or multiple emails multiple times. So this is a fail-safe built into it. Don't mark the emails as read. Do not remove them from the primary inbox. These are all just fail-safes again. And if the classification confidence is unclear, so if Gemini doesn't know how to classify it, if it doesn't know if it's accounting or personal, it might just put it into the miscellaneous as a last resort there. And then what else? After everything's done, it'll add on the AI process label here so that we don't process it one more time. And also we're asking it to walk through connecting in the Gemini API key. Okay, so everything looks good, okay? Everything looks good. Now we have this .env file. We need to add in our Gemini key over here, and it should have walked us through how to get this. It's going to say visit AI Studio, blah, blah, blah. We've already actually got this from the first project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a trip down memory lane over here and go into our first project and grab the API key. And I'd recommend you guys doing the same thing as well, because if we've already done it once, there's no point in reinventing the wheel. I'm going to copy this in here and I'm going to say I've added, and I don't want to scream at Gemini because I genuinely feel bad with all caps. I've added in the API key. Can you please confirm it's working and test the workflow out by pulling in the last email. So I'm going to send that off, and in a secondary email account, I'm actually going to go ahead and fire off a dummy email to myself. I'm just going to call this accounting and accounting. And the reason why I'm using this is I just want to trigger like a certain category based on a keyword, just because we're testing right now. So I'm hoping to just go through here and see if it actually works. So let's go ahead and let's see if that email, first of all, came in, which it did. And hopefully it should be able to pull that email and it should be able to categorize this properly. Okay, I'm going to refresh the page one more time here. This may take a couple seconds and hopefully it gets it right. Maybe it doesn't get it right and we have to go back to the drawing board and just follow up with Gemini. But you know, we're just gonna have to go back and forth until. Okay, so this prompt has been finished. It says, I have verified the connection and attempted to test the workflow with your most recent email. Gmail connection success. I was able to retrieve your latest email here. Gemini AI classification failed. Error 400 API, key not valid. Google is rejecting the current key in your environmental variable. The key in your environmental variable ends with a hyphen, okay, and is 38 characters long. So it looks like I actually may have screwed that up. Of course I did. You probably saw that. And okay, oh boy. We're going to go ahead and try that out one more time. I'm going to save this and I'm going to say, please try again. I've updated the key. Okay, that was a human error. That was not an anti-gravity error. As much as I would love to blame anti-gravity for my mistakes, I'm going to let this one slide today. Okay, so we're going to give this a shot and we're going to try this one more time to see if the classification works. So it is editing this classification. Sometimes what's happening, and we can actually see it here, is it may have tested out Gemini 1.5 Flash, realized, oh crap, this isn't working. We got to update the model. And so it updated it to a model that actually exists. A lot of the times it might pull in an outdated model that may not be accessible or may not be available anymore. And so it updated it and it worked. And if you remember, this was the exact same error that we had in Project 1. We tried Gemini 1.5 Flash and it didn't work. So we updated it to Gemini 2 Flash. The cool thing about anti-gravity is it can actually recall historical context. So it can remember what we did in this workflow and last workflow and the workflow after that. And so this is really powerful stuff, right? So the other important thing to note here is we're asking Gemini or anti-gravity to test it out. And that's super, super important, because the thing is if we don't ask it to test it out, we're going to be the ones testing it. And there might be an error and then we have to test again and we have to test again. But if we ask anti-gravity to test it out, it's going to go through all those errors, be like, oh shoot, it's not working. Oh shoot, it's not working. And it's going to keep trying until it eventually gets it right. So let's go down here. It says, great news. Love the enthusiasm. Anti-gravity, the Gemini API key is working perfectly and the classification engine is structured. Email subject accounting. Let's go ahead and see if it actually classified this. And now we can see that it has the accounting tag on it. Again, anti-gravity is not perfect. There's going to be mistakes. We just got to work back and forth with it, with our junior developer over here to make sure that it actually gets the job done properly. We're going to move on to the next prompt here because everything's looking good so far. What I'm going to say next is for emails classified as personal. So again, emails that go down personal, we want to create drafts, and we also want to attach those drafts to an existing thread. So if we come in here, we have this draft. We don't want this draft just to sit in the drafts folder. We want it to attach to the main email right over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire off this prompt and have anti-gravity build this section out next. It's going to create another agentic workflow with the instructions here. And of course, we're also going to have a code that is accompanying it as well, actually getting the job done that we want done. But let's just take a look at these instructions. Automatically generate and attach draft response to the emails classified as personal. It's going to go through the logic and everything we're looking for. And yeah, hopefully that works. I'm going to go ahead and accept this. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to actually test this out. So I'm going to send an email to myself, okay? And it's going to be personal email. Again, all we're trying to do is we're just trying to trigger the category right over here to personal. So next, what we're going to do is wait for that email to come in. And I'm going to say to anti-gravity, I just sent an email. Can you please test out if the email drafting works on it? Okay, awesome. So now we're going to see if what we just built here is actually going to work. So it's writing the code. It's going to pull in that latest email, which you can kind of see right here. And then it's going to go ahead and give it a shot. Cool. So it has officially finished this. The test was successful. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. And we can see that now it has the personal tag on it. And we only have one draft. I just want to refresh the page a couple times, because if it's going to draft again, we're going to see it, right? And if you recall, we had these safeguards in place, okay? We had these safeguards to make sure that we're only pulling every 60 seconds, right? So that we're not dealing with duplicate emails. We also have the polling set up properly, but it doesn't always work. So I'm just going to keep this going for a second here. Okay, and that looks good to me. So this part does look good. It's not drafting duplicate responses. Everything is perfect. Now we're going to move on to the last step here, which is pulling out documents and storing them in Google Drive. Now, I'm going to skip over this one. This is going to be something that's going to be optional if you guys want to go ahead and implement it. But what you could do is you could have Antigravity analyze 15 emails that you've sent for your writing style and how you respond, and then like kind of create an instructions guide to capture your personality and reply in the same way that you'd reply yourself, right? So if you want to go ahead and make your draft replies more personal, you can certainly go ahead and do that as well. But we're going to be going down to the last prompt, or the second last prompt here, which is going to be taking out all of these particular documents, like this invoice right over here, and we are going to pull them out and we're going to put it inside of Google Drive. And if you recall, when we set this whole workflow up, it connected into not only Gmail, but we also connected into Google Drive as well. So there's no authentication required. We've already done the heavy lifting. So inside of Antigravity, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to paste my next prompt, which is saying inside Google Drive, please create a folder called Gmail Attachments. So we have a parent folder here called Gmail Attachments, and inside Gmail Attachments, we have subfolders, and these subfolders correspond to labels over here or to the default categories over here, okay? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that if we get an accounting PDF coming in or attachment, it goes into the Gmail attachments folder, into the accounting subfolder. If we have miscellaneous emails coming with attachments, they're going to land there. If we have personal emails with attachments, it should go in the personal folder, which, well, doesn't look like it's here. So we'd have to go ahead and create that. Okay, so back inside of Antigravity, and again, you know, there's always going to be mistakes. We're always going to have to kind of update things as we go to make it perfect. But back inside Antigravity, we can see that it created the Agentic Workflow to handle attachments, to automatically upload attachments from classified emails into organized Google Drive folders. We have the corresponding code here, and then we have the polling that was just updated. And now it says, I have implemented the attachment handling logic and integrated it into your main polling engine. And so it's going to go ahead and do everything. The next step is the final main loop script. Okay, whatever the script, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what this is doing, but we're going to specifically, I'm just not sure what exactly it's recommending next, but we're going to specifically test this out. So I'm going to send off an email to myself one more time, and this is going to be under accounting, and I'm going to trigger this workflow or the right classification by putting in the keywords that I'm looking for, and I have a test invoice right over here that I'm going to attach to this. Now I've cleared this folder here, so hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything works properly, it will end up there. I've sent a test email to my account, to my Gmail account. Can you please test the test uploading? Can you please test the workflow to grab attachments? I don't know why I'm struggling so much to work this prompt, but to grab attachments and add them into Google Drive. Okay, we're going to go ahead. We're going to send this off, and then we're going to wait for Antigravity to go ahead and test this out. Sweet. And it looks like it has finished the prompt. The attachment handling workflow has been successfully tested and is fully operational. So let's go ahead and take a look at this email coming through. We have the tag, okay, on it. And hopefully, if we refresh the page here, this should have an attachment, which it doesn't look like it does. But what I want to take a look at is I want to see if we duplicated this folder or not. So we have two of these Gmail attachments, and it looks like both do not have this email in it, which is unfortunate. So we'll go back and I'm going to send a message saying, I did not see the attachment in the accounting folder in Google Drive in the, okay, I'm actually just going to leave it like that. Can you please test the last email again and tell me why it didn't work, and test it until it's successful. Okay, so we're gonna get it to explain what's happening so it doesn't feel like a massive black box where we don't know what's going on. And then we're gonna get it to keep testing until it eventually gets it right. Okay, so everything's just wrapping up here. It's gone through a couple tests like we can see here. It's gone ahead and updated a lot of the code, and it says it successfully identified the issue, cleaned up your Google Drive structure, and verified the attachments is now being stored correctly. So I'm gonna go into both of these and see. Okay, so there it is. It's gone ahead and it's taken that Google Drive or that particular document right here, okay, and it has officially added it into our Google Drive folder. So now what we've gone ahead and done in this workflow is we've successfully polled for incoming emails. We're sorting it properly with guardrails in place to filter out duplicates so we don't go through the same thing multiple times or the same email multiple times. Then we're going to take out attachments and upload them to Google Drive, and then we are going to create draft AI responses to personal emails. Now we're going to be skipping over accounting for this purpose and promotional social emails just because I don't want to drag this on. Once you know how to do two, these last ones should be fairly straightforward. And in the last prompt here, all this is doing is essentially uploading this exact workflow into Modal like we did the first time around. Now I'm going to leave it there just because if you know how to do this one time, like we've already done in the first project, you're certainly going to be able to do it a second time. It's literally an identical process. You'll have to copy in this prompt right down here, put it into Antigravity. It's going to upload it into Modal, and you might have to go back and forth a couple times, just like we've been doing this whole time, to get it operational. But once you go through that process, it should be good to go. Now, I just want to say, if you've made it this far, a huge thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. If you did find value in it, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because I'm sure if you like this video, you're also going to like a ton of other videos that I create on a weekly basis as well. And also hit that like button too. If you guys are looking to learn more about AI and automation, I highly recommend taking a look at my school community, where there are two, or I guess three really outcomes in here. First of all, how you can learn all of these tools to save time and earn money in your life. And then specifically, I will teach you as one of the transformations, how you can find, close, and fulfill your first AI automation client within 30 days or less. And in the third transformation, I'll show you how you can automate up to 80% of your existing business using the exact blueprints I used to scale to 7 figures. And all you have to do is copy, paste, and deploy the blueprints into your business, and they should work for you as well. Maybe a couple tweaks and you're good to go. Now, if you don't want to have to worry about implementing anything, you can also take a look at my agency here, where we implement these exact solutions for business owners, maybe just like yourself as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.